Jason Dawn.
Here.
Julie Simpson.
Here.
Robin Cleek.
Here.
Wes Pullen here. Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here. 6
Jeff
present,
is-
and Jeff is
Are we
going to
com-
join us
Okay.
by telephone, so I'm going to, once we get him in, probably all present. Anybody from the public wishes to comment? Once, twice? Yep.
Sounds like a hospital. Sorry.
Okay, we'll call him in 5 minutes.
Let me try to get a quick
Our first presentation is by our PTO, Wendy Elman and Katie Aga.
I don't know where anything is in my
Sorry.
house.
We're going to put that on hold until they're done, and we'll try to get it.
I don't have to take any notes, just for my own. Thanks, love it. Yes, you're fine.
Good evening. We just are delighted to be able to come and present our annual disbursement. So this year, we are pleased to present a check for $64,000 for our $65,000 for our fundraising efforts this year. And with programming and books, the donation back to the schools this year is approximately $86,000.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Here's the detail of how the funds were spent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for all your efforts throughout the school year. They're really, really appreciated.
Thank you. We truly, it was a pleasure and a labor of love for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation is by Dr. Mark Friedman. So as you all know, Nick is going to be leaving us. So at this time of the year, the board decided that instead of doing full superintendent search, which normally takes about 6 to 8 months, we would do do an interim search for 1 year, have an interim superintendent for 1 year, and then BWP Associates, so Dr. Friedman and Ms. Nolan would
Hey,
do
Jeff, we're gonna start.
the full search for us. They are also helping us for principal at Town Line, as well as the curriculum director search too. So they are going to be here. So I wanted to introduce them to everybody. The board has met them, but to the community too. So Dr. Friedman.
We'll come up here. And we can't leave Lynn out because we've got to be very close with Lynn.
Yes.
Lots of things happening quickly too, so, and this is Ann Nolan.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
We'll come up here. Actually, what we just want to do is kind of update that little quick look that I gave you when I met with you a couple of weeks ago and highlight a few things, agenda, and then people in the audience will kind of see what the timeline is. But in the meantime, we're working diligently on the Town Line principal opening, and the applications close off on Friday. We have close to 30 applicants right now, and we'll get a rush between now and the end, so that's really good. And then tomorrow, I believe, we'll launch the search for the teaching and learning director. So we have a lot of business, and we've been communicating an awful lot lately. But got her in my direct dial. So let me pass these out, and I don't know if you want to start. But
Well, while you're passing that out, I'll just say that, first of all, it's nice to meet all of you. My first official time
Thank
to be able to come and see you in person, although I've been on the website, so I recognized everyone by your pictures. So that was kind of good for me to get to know you all a little bit. But like Mark was saying, we've been working with the interim, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and the principalship. And with the applicants approaching 30, we're pretty pleased with that. We did a We did what we called a rolling search when we published it, and we brainstormed with Lynn and really got the word out as many places as we possibly could. And a rolling search means get the apps in right now because we want to see them. And I think people were very aware of that. And with school just getting out, people had a bit of time to begin to work on those apps. So knock on wood, we think we've got some good ones that we can take a look at later in the week.
It was funny today as we were working on the posting to put out for tomorrow, got a text from a neighbor district saying, do you know anybody for the same type of job? So I said, no, we don't know anybody. You know, we can't pass any names on to you. So we're keeping them all to ourselves. So quickly, in looking at the timeline for the superintendent search, we're going to get an early start. But basically, things don't generally happen in August when people start returning back to the seriousness of work. And so start with your process of naming interim superintendents and having the interim superintendent or superintendents start on July 1st. And we've given you, quite a few candidates for that. I know that's all going to work out. And then mid to late August, we're going to launch our advertising, launch the official posting, and formally receive applications. So that's the real key. A lot of times people will call, actually had lunch with somebody today who called me and said, I got to take you to lunch. We got to hear about Hawthorne. So we're doing the informal stuff, but formally we'll start accepting applications in mid to late August. And we'll do all our postings on the usual places that we go for. And then alert all of our colleagues. We have something close to 20 associates in the Chicago area. All of them will know, and they will begin their recruiting too. Because what we usually say to a board is, and I think I may have mentioned this to you when I was with you that Saturday, the superintendent for Hawthorne District 73 is probably sitting at a desk somewhere in another school district as a superintendent today and doesn't really know he or she will be the Hawthorne superintendent until we have a chance to work with them and give them the sales pitch as to why it would be advantageous to come to a district like this. And and knowing this district so well as I do, it's very easy to do that. So we feel really good about that. In early September, we're going to do some extensive stakeholder meetings. I believe you said you'd like all the input and all the community engagement. As much community engagement as we'll be able to pull together for you. Meeting groups, talking to groups, getting input on an online survey. And we'll do that in Spanish and English. So we'll have a pretty good turnout. I assume we'll get a good turnout. That's where we rely on the PTOs and people in the audience to get the word out, your press, that. And we'll conduct those surveys and do the engagement stuff in a 2-week period. And we do that in September before everyone gets overly involved with other things. Then we'll have a period of kind of quiet while we assemble applications. And that's the September-October period where people apply, they call us. We'll meet with folks on a regular basis. We do a lot of conversation. I'm going over to meet somebody for lunch or breakfast or something like that and talking because they want to get the personal touch. Someone who's successful in another district, they're not out throwing their application to any opening that they see. They want to be told about it. They want to be pretty much swept off their feet as to why this would be a good match for them. And just because you're successful in one place doesn't necessarily mean you can be successful everywhere. So we like that piece, and we feel we really excel in being able to reach out, not only us, but our colleagues. We have a third colleague who will work with us at that stage, and that'll be Glenn Schlichting, who just retired last Friday from LaGrange Elementary District. So we thought we'd give him a day off today rather than drag him out here from Yorkville. So, but he will be working with us and helping us to recruit the best candidates.
One of the things that'll work really well for us in the fall, very early fall, is that there are a lot of superintendent activities that time of year where superintendents get together. Mark and I will most likely be, one of us or Glenn or
We've
all
kept our
three of us.
memberships to
We keep
all
our-
the organizations.
And that's a really good spot for us to, people will walk up during the social portion of a meeting and talk with us or ask us if they can give us a call or those kinds of things. So that'll work out really well for us in September as we gather more information about the district, and then we're able to share more. As Mark says, being next door, he knows a lot about the district, but we'll get to hear more from the stakeholder group and from you individually too at that point.
And then early November, we'll begin our screening interviews. You say early November, the school year isn't over till June. Why so early? But
Best candidates.
again,
Yeah.
I believe, and that's just my guess, I believe this upcoming year there'll be somewhere like 6 to 8 superintendent openings of a similar nature in high expectation communities. So we're competing, and we'll want to not be the last ones, in line. Not to say that it matters. There is no pecking order. It's about a match. And how well that profile that we create for you matches the candidates. That's really where it's at. But again, we don't still want to be, at the back end of the line. So early November, we'll do our screenings. Typically, we're going to look at least 10 to 12 people in formal screening interviews. We have a place outside the area so that no one sees anyone, no one's confidentiality is broken, and we conduct our interviews.
Our goal at this point is to see people face to face,
Yeah, we do
if at all
not.
possible.
Yeah.
Obviously you have to have some exceptions if there's an out-of-state candidate or conflict you can't get around, but our goal is to sit down across the table from your candidates at that point and look them in the eye and really get to know them and ask some serious questions and be able to judge not just the answer, but the body language a bit too.
Yeah, it's difficult to sit across from somebody and we ask those tough questions, the stuff you see in the newspapers, all those things, and have somebody lie directly to your face because, we'll always say, everything has to be the truth because you're signing an agreement that says if not, you'll forfeit your job. And so we really reinforce that. We try not to be negative, but in this day and age,
We're pretty strict on that one.
we're strict. Yeah, and we represent you, and we want to do everything to protect you and this community and this school district. In mid-November, we're going to meet with you, and if you'll recall, I talked about a workshop that we do with the board to prep you. Some of you have been through this process. I know Jason has, but some of you have not, and we prep you with questions, what to do, not to do, things to stay out of trouble, of questions that we can't ask. So we'll do all that in about an hour and a half workshop, and then present the candidates to you and get you all set up for your screening interview schedule. We'll push you in August to actually set
Set some
those
dates.
dates. And we'll talk with Sonali and make sure all those get locked in, because a week before, trying to get 7 busy people to find 2 or 3 evenings to do interviews will be impossible.
Tell me
We're
about
bumping
all
up-
I know.
Really?
I think
We're bumping up to triple I too.
Yeah, we're seeing we
yeah.
know about that. So we
Yeah.
know when to push and when not to. And so then late November, early December, and that'll be, again, based upon your availability and your calendar, we will begin, you'll have your finalist interviews, and that will be 2, maybe 3 people, which will get you to a December appointment, which is, I think, the ideal. Then, the contract may take a little time to get worked out when you get the attorneys and the candidate's attorney working together. It may take a while, but you'll at least have that decision made, signed, sealed, and done. That then will give that person plenty of spring and early winter transition time to be visible before July 1st, to participate in things, to help make some decisions that will impact he or she when they take over on July 1st. So this timing, well, some may say, why so early?
It's good.
It's good. It's the best way to go. We just did the very same thing in Wheeling last year, and we finished on the date that they selected. We had everybody free their calendars for certain interview dates, And they said, we're gonna appoint on December 14th meeting. They appointed on the December 14th meeting. And they had a nice spring transition. So it worked out really well. If you bleed into January, if
okay.
there's a snow day or something that gets in the way, you know how I feel about snow days. Former superintendent, no, we don't. But we don't like to talk about it, but you can go into January and
Yeah,
that'd be fine.
and that's why we don't really give you, at the end of the search, we want to give you a little wiggle room. Because you just, as Mark said, you just don't know what schedules come up, or attorneys can't get together, or those kinds of things when you're looking at selling a contract. So our goal is to get it done before the end of the year, but we give you a little wiggle room there too, so that your public knows that you could spill over into January if you need to.
Mhm.
Because people are watching you at that time of year, because now they're like, when are they going to name that new superintendent? So we like to give you a little wiggle room there.
But I think your press will
Yeah.
now know, hey, they're shooting to get done by
By
the end of December, and process will have a lot of community engagement, there'll be opportunities for people to have input, and this is, the type of thing that a board always likes. Questions, anything? I know we rushed through, I know you have a very busy night tonight, but you always have busy meetings.
There's always something going on.
Yes, I know.
We've talked. Any questions?
Yeah, please.
I had a few, but if anybody else wants to go first, that's fine.
No, go ahead.
I just have one. The survey that's going to be launched in early September, is that, the questions for that survey, are those going to come out of the focus groups, the stakeholder focus groups, or is that just
We have a third party.
We have a third party provide us a survey.
the questions that will be asked on the survey, or are the survey questions the same, used all the time for the searches?
They vary. Mostly the same. I mean, we have a template, and we employ someone from South Carolina. We don't want anyone to accuse the search firm of stacking the deck with the questions and answers. So we have this third party. So there is a standard set of questions. However, we can adjust
Yeah,
them.
we can do some tweaking if need be.
The reason I ask, our residency event is early August, and that's a really good opportunity for us to capture a lot of people to survey. I don't know, so it's a little bit earlier on this, on this timeline, so I don't know if it's something we could look into to.
We could do it at any time. We
Okay.
have no,
We
yeah,
usually do it the same time we're doing the focus groups, because we promote it.
yeah.
But that's not the only way to do it. If you've got a time that you capture people, because we're going to launch it on your website and work with your district to do some publicity. So yeah, we're open to doing it at a different time. There's nothing that says we have to do them at the same time at all.
Okay.
Flexibility
So that's-
is, we're more than willing to be very flexible about things.
When we meet with the focus groups, every group gets the same questions then. We ask 3 or 4 basic, open-ended kinds of questions, but we ask you those same questions, and we ask the focus groups those same questions. So you get quantitative information from your survey. We don't touch it. We don't do anything with it except try to combine the English and Spanish for you, so you can see that. And but then the qualitative information, of course, just depends on what people have to say. And what we're looking for there are themes, trying to identify 10 or 12 themes that will let us know what kind of a candidate would be the best candidate for the district. And it varies a little bit from district to district.
I know you had more.
Yes.
No,
Oh,
Robin does, I think.
I had a few.
Thanks.
So sticking with the questions and the survey group, or the focus groups, when do we let you know what our consensus is for the priorities we want to see in a candidate? Is it a good idea to wait until we get the focus group results? Is it a good idea to come up with our own anyway, since we have a different perspective most likely than the rest of the community?
we'll do individually one-on-one with each of you.
Okay.
And then we always feel that it's better to do one-on-one. So the 3 of us will divide up the group. So each of us will interview 2 of you, and one will interview 3 of you.
Great.
And we'll do that separately.
Great. And then we're talking about who makes the final hiring decision? I know that a lot of times these things are done in teams and it has various stakeholders on the team. Do you guys usually recommend the types of roles that should be represented on that team? Do we just pick, which admin's on, or,
We'll talk
How
you
does that
through that. There's pros and cons. The one piece that we're finding today is the least amount of public exposure, the better pool you get.
Okay.
So if people are knowing that they're going to be paraded around and they don't get the job in their home district, people find out and say, wait a minute, why are you out looking at another district? It could hurt them. It'll hurt their career. So it tends to suppress the candidate pool somewhat. However,
Interesting.
that doesn't mean there aren't ways to do that with confidential groups.
Okay.
So we can set it up in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk with you about how to do that. It's further down the road. But they could be representative groups, mixed groups. You will have a feel for your stakeholders as to how you'd like to do that. We'll put it in motion for you, but keeping in mind that a 100% open search, which you don't see too often anymore, in some states, every candidate is required to be publicly announced.
Okay.
If we did that in Illinois, we'd have 6 people if we were lucky. So there has to be some semblance of privacy for a candidate to apply for a job
Sure.
and not have his or her name splattered all over.
But we know how to set that up, and we'll give you some options on how to do that, help you do it.
Okay, and then one last question. Can you, I'm sorry this is so open-ended, can you tell us what your sense is about the timing of this posting for the teaching and learning position or the curriculum director position, whatever you want to call it? Why is now the best time to post that versus waiting until a superintendent's been identified that would then make the appointment?
Well, it's a matter of to get the job done in the void. Seventy,
60-ish or so,
yeah,
yeah.
one of the largest turnouts I've
We
seen.
get
Jeez.
really good turnouts for those positions because they're,
Yeah, double the superintendent.
yeah,
turnout.
they're very,
Wow.
people love to do the curriculum end of the job. That's what I love, so
Yeah,
I
there's some
understand that.
protection in
Yeah,
that. You're not, you're not subject to the next election, and then maybe a new board comes on and you're gone.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, you know?
There's a
So-
little buffer there,
Trying
right?
to be.
Political,
We think we'll
politically
still get a
correct,
good
yeah.
turnout. We'll give it a good try.
Okay.
We know some people that we've even kind
Yeah.
of brainstormed with already.
I think it's worth a try.
I agree.
I agree with everybody who made that decision, and we're just going to implement things. But
Okay.
if there is somebody out there and that person was interested in this type of a job and they waited for the right job to open at whatever time, we would have maybe lost that person. 'Cause
Right.
these positions open
Yeah,
up often.
Right.
And so I think we give it a shot.
Yeah, and
Okay.
again, we're going to do a rolling search, so I think we'll get the apps in really quickly. We've
Yeah.
talked about that, getting that launched very quickly and getting it out, the same way as we got the principal one out. So
Okay.
we'll see, we'll know very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think having it on our website helps because people visit our website
Mhm.
on job postings all the time because
Sure.
we do much, much more than just superintendents.
Right.
So just on a daily basis, there's folks that just see it. It's like the guy who called me. He just read about it and said, "Oh, you're doing a superintendent search. I want to talk to you." He was anxious. So
Right. Okay. Well, I'm happy to be working with you. Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you.
Robin. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Robin.
Thanks. We're excited.
We're glad to be here.
excited. Our third partner he would be jumping out of his seat right now. He's so happy to be retired and has something to do. That he was so excited, and truly was our decision not to drag him on his first day of retirement. But
So we'll get him in front of you very quickly.
Yeah.
And you will love him.
yeah, LaGrange District 105,
He's
very
a great
stellar
superintendent.
superintendent. Yes.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
your
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sorry we
Thank you
took
so-
up a little more time than normal, but we
fine.
feel like we're part of the staff already. Lynn is just,
For sure.
we've been out to Starbucks. We're good. We're good.
You'll call us, of course. I know you and Mark do
And,
that.
We will keep you posted as to the progress of these searches.
Everything, yeah.
We don't just go run off and you don't hear another word. So you'll hear regular updates on that.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
far, so good.
And good luck, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much.
Good
Thank
luck.
you very much.
I agree.
You already got hold of Wendy and Katie. He's already recruiting people. The next presentation is our 2018-19 tentative budget. Hey,
Good, thank you.
big one.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ready to go here. This is the preliminary budget update. This is the budget calendar. If you recall, last fall, we approved this calendar at that time. And currently, we're at the June 11th date for the budget overview discussion. The preliminary budget is in a very early stage at this point. We're going to continue to work on and develop the budget as well as our projections. They will be shared in upcoming board meetings. Aiming for that August 13th date where we have a public hearing to have a finalized draft at that point for that tentative budget. And then, of course, the adoption is aimed for the September 17th date. The original calendar had a different September date. We updated it to reflect a relative, an ideal date that exists, which didn't before. And then the 28th is when the budget is due at the tax extension office, which is the last day to submit. Very good. Well, part of our discussion every year is to talk about fund balance, and we're going to talk about fund balance a little bit tonight. Above, you can see our bar graphs for our operational funds, Ed, O&M, transportation, working cash, and you can see a negative downward trend. That's what happens when you grow and the revenue doesn't match the needs, the financial needs of that growth. You can see some of our operational deficits over the past 3 years. We had a $3 million deficit in 2015, $467,000 in 2016, and $1.7 million last year. So that is the trend. ISB suggests that we have 3 months on hand for our fund balance, and that's something that's scored on our financial profile score, which is 25%, 3 months. To a great degree, I've said this before, a fund balance is an arbitrary amount. It's selected, June 30th is when we get audited. By no means does that reflect how much money you have to spend, or a slush fund or an investment fund. That's going to be the not the working cash, but the cash reserve. I'll go into that in the next slide. The AFR, it looks at the fund balance to revenue ratio. So it's a ratio of your fund balance to revenue. And ideally, you want your fund balance to go up every year as well. So if you look at this line graph, on the bar graph, you see it going down. Ideally, you want to see your fund balances going up so that line graph remains flat, if you follow me. So having a stable ratio means that you have to have a growing fund balance that matches your revenue rate to maintain that ratio at the same level year over year. And our overall fund balance through the audited June 2017 amount was 40.2 million. The operational piece was 31.8 million. The estimated amount is 38.8 million for June of 2018, with an operational component estimated at 30.6 million. Okay, we're going to talk about cash reserve now. Cash reserve. So this is our working cash. As we go throughout the year, every day our cash reserve modulates throughout the year. And you can see that within this graphic. Right now, it's estimated where we were to, if we stayed on track and expensed Sullivan out of our fund balance, out of cash reserves, here's what would happen to our cash reserves. We'd be here at our low point, which has been updated because we've deferred construction. We're at 13.1 million for our cash reserve. If we continued through May of 2019, May of 2020, we'd be down to 1 million for our cash reserve. It's an important number. You don't want to fall below zero. What happens if you fall below zero? Then you're going to become in a cycle, an annual cycle, where every year, probably around March, April, you're going to do a tax anticipated warrant. We would be in a cycle of constantly doing short-term borrowing to make payroll through the month of May. So it would be worthwhile to consider the cash reserve as the number to really monitor, to observe, to make sure that that number doesn't dip too low. You have a certain number of months in your cash reserve in case there's a deferred payment from the state or things along that line come up. Perhaps there's a capital emergency project that needs to take place. That cash reserve helps from that perspective. So right now we've got about 2.5 months of cash reserve as it stands right now. So 2.5 months of emergency money on hand, which, by the way, we do invest as well. We just don't let it sit there and do nothing. We invest that money. So that money currently generates, with the current interest rates, it generates $290,000 a year for us. So, you could translate that to positions. Maybe it's 4 teachers and, a paraprofessional. It's part of our budget. We look to that as part of our revenue. It's an important piece as well. Okay. Any questions about this topic? No? Okay. So source of funding, the big blue piece is local. We are highly dependent on local funding, primarily from real estate taxes, and that's the blue. That is 87%. What drives the blue? It's the cost of gas. It is the consumer price index. So it's the cost of goods. The consumer price index is posted, and that's how much we can raise taxes, the total dollar amount over the previous year. It's by the consumer price index. That model works really well in a district that's stable as it relates to enrollment. So if you're not growing and you've got the same number of employees, same number of buildings, same amount of space to maintain, if your revenue is increasing by the consumer price index, then we're able to reciprocate that increase to our employees as far as increases, to our vendors, materials that increase in cost as well. That model doesn't work so well for those districts that are growing if you don't have new construction with that growth. And that's, I think, the challenging position we're in today as a community. Consumer price index, the 10-year history, it's 1.8%. So that's the typical growth in revenue over the last 10 years. The last 5 years, it's been less. In 2014 and 2015, we experienced 0.8 and 0.7% increases in revenue. I assure you our expenses were far above that amount. If we were to project the 2018 consumer price index, things are getting more expensive, and so the CPI is growing. We're up to 2.5% for CPI through the month of April, which is an upward trajectory. This time last year, it was a downward trajectory. So it might be a higher CPI this year than previous years. Okay, we're going to change gears and talk about our revenue as it relates to this year's budget. Taxes are comprised of half of the 2016 CPI, which was 2.1%. That revenue will be received in the September payment of 2018 in 3 months. They'll be part of next year's revenue. The other half will be the 2017 CPI number, which was also 2.1%, and that'll be received in June of 2019. So the evidence-based funding calculation, it replaces general state aid. It is provided, the calculations were provided to us from ISB in April of 2018. It lumps together state special ed with the exception of private tuition, and the bilingual is a separate payment from that. The evidence-based funding model looked at all districts and identified how adequately they were funded based upon the number of students, the needs, a very complex equation, but it basically computed the adequacy of districts. We want to look at our neighbors. We want to look at District 128, the high school district. They are the highest tier, which is a tier 4, so they are 108% adequately funded, meaning as it relates to the adequacy calculations that ISB performed, they're about 28.2 million over, according to those calculations. For us, we are 2 levels below that here in Hawthorne. We're at 82% adequacy, which is a tier 2, about $9.1 million under a year. Okay. So how are we going to fund these tier 1 and tier 2 districts? It's going to be funded with new money from the state. And where is that new money from the state going to come from? Well, it's being rolled out slowly, so that would be on a go-forward basis. This year, it's going to amount to about $108,000 more for this district. So out of the $9.1 million we're short to be at 100% adequacy, we're going to get $108,000 being tier 2. Majority of the funds are directed to tier 1. But, you know, where the state giveth, they also taketh. With the CPPRT change, we're going to lose $90,000 in funding due to reallocation of the corporate personal property replacement tax. We will lose about $90,000 a year for that. So we're going to net $18,500 after the entire rollout of the evidence-based funding model for this district. Okay. We're assuming that we get all of our payments for next year from the state. We are working through our federal funding accounts. They need to be reconciled. We want to make sure that we budget effectively and it's an appropriate amount that reflects what we would actually get from these grants. Right. So let's go back 10 years. Let's go back to 2007 and compare ourselves to some peer districts. You know, we were in the middle. Lake Forest was here. Lincolnshire, as it relates to total revenue per pupil operationally. Lincolnshire, Lake Forest were above us. We were in the middle. We were above Libertyville. We were above Fremont and above Mundelein. We were the top third elementary districts in Lake County as it relates to revenue per pupil back in 2007. I think we're in the bottom fourth as it relates to revenue per student. Over the 10 years, it's about a 0.9% increase in revenue per pupil over 10 years, less than 1% increase. Our average peer comparisons generate 25% more revenue per student, or $2,800 each. So that's pretty telling. When enrollment grows and your revenue doesn't, then you become pretty efficient at $11,600 a student. Being in a really high-performing district, it's pretty good value, but one we're struggling with as it relates to deficit spending. How do we expend our funds per pupil? It is, the blue is salaries, the red is benefits, purchase services is in yellow, and we've got supplies and materials in green, and that comprises the majority of how we expend our funds per pupil. Historical expense trends, it's this is pretty much everything by object code. The cyan and the green representing salaries and benefits. With everything else being relatively equal, that's where our increasing costs exist. Let's focus in on just salaries and benefits. From 2012 till now, salaries are up $5.1 million from where we were a few years ago. About 4.7% a year is how much our salaries have gone up. This is all inclusive, so this includes the growth. The 50-plus teachers we've hired in that time frame is included within this. So if you back out the $3 million is about that cost, the net for raises, it's about 2.1 over that entire time period. And then you'd be way under the 4.66%. Benefits have gone up about 4% a year, and it's up about $2.1 million as well. Keep in mind, our 5-year income CPI is 1.4%. So the revenue has not kept pace with expenses. So revenue being 1.4%, salaries 4.66%, benefits at 4% are biggest two object codes. And that's why you end up with some deficit spending. As it relates to expenses for our budget, it reflects the salaries and benefits that were agreed to with the last tentative agreement. We have decided as a component of some cost-cutting measures to retract our curricular supplies back to the 2017 level to $495. We're going to maintain, obviously, the one-to-one devices at middle school. Instructional spending overall is up $680 when you include the salaries and benefits. We are still spending down that IMRF fund and shifting that levy to the ed fund. We probably have 3 more years of that before we get to the point where we can't redirect that to the ed fund and it needs to come back to the IMRF fund. Once that fund balance is at a more appropriate level, I think we've got 3 more years of that gifting from the IMRF to the ed fund. Transportation costs are up $300,000. Benefits are up $290,000, PPO being a major increase as far as the renewal. And we have some planned summer project work at $275,000 as presented at a previous meeting. Something new, we've been talking about safety quite a bit, and in these conversations, we've identified a number of improvements district-wide, and I think we're going to bring this forward at a future meeting if we want to proceed with $125,000 worth of improvements as it relates to strobe lights, things we can do to improve safety within this district. And our workman's comp insurance renewal has also gone up $56,000. And this is a wire.
We interrupt this program for a correction to our Apple
keeps
TV
flashing?
was fritzing out, and that's
Okay.
why I'm trying to hardwire it, so we apologize.
It's on my desk. I'll go get it.
Commercial break.
Yes, sorry.
Sing a song.
It's all right. I needed time to pick my jaw up off the floor anyway.
How much does
9 million
Apple TV
short,
cost?
108,000.
It seems reasonable.
Yeah, that unfortunately is, and when you see other districts nearby at high percent, not their fault, but
Right.
that's the funding.
I get it.
Yeah, it's the funding issue that we deal with, so.
Sweet. Hey, there's advantages to getting out of Illinois, Nick.
Yeah.
Won't have to deal with that anymore.
Watch, this isn't gonna blink while we're waiting for the dongle to plug it all
Probably
in.
not.
Of course.
Do apologize, that's a
blinking now.
brand new issue we haven't had.
Intermission. Get your popcorn.
Maybe a second to stretch your feet.
Decrease the budget in technology.
Right. We're not replacing the Apple TV.
With wires.
Dimitri is not here to get that.
He's not here today. Oh. Ruh-roh.
Yep.
It's all plugged in.
My screen is flashing now. Let me try a different
Maybe it's your laptop.
connection.
I should have gone to the West.
We need a Windows machine.
Oh.
Are we up now?
Ouch. Okay. That's like my dad would say.
Okay. All right, welcome back, everyone. So our 2018-19 tentative budget is projected. Green is revenue, orange is expenses, and blue is the resulting fund balances. You can see here that's our 2017 audited starting fund balances. We have estimated where we will end up. We will probably end up meeting our budget, which did have a built-in deficit in the ed fund of $877,000. Our tentative budget in its early stages, we're at 1.8 million in deficit with the ed fund, but there are a number of components that we have conservatively left in as of right now, but it will be refined and updated. For example, we're at 358 full-time equivalent teachers currently. I think the net should result in 355 FTEs, and this budget also includes a contingency of 4 positions. So we would have a net 7 contingency in positions. If we want to maintain the 4, we'll be able to reduce some of the budgeted expenses. And just a lot more opportunity to refine the federal funds, the revenue that has been budgeted. And the copier lease, we want to take a harder look to ensure that we can go another year without having to replace the equipment. You may recall that one of our strategies is, since the copy machines are completely paid off as of last year, perhaps if we can get another year or 2 out of it, that would save $300,000. So more likely than not, I think we can make it another year minimum with that. With O&M, we have not factored a number of saving initiatives within the BNG department. And those I would highlight as tier 1 savings. So as we look at some of this deficit spending that has happened in the past and is projected going forward, it's an opportunity to get the financial advisory task force back together again and to spend a lot of time and energy identifying cost-cutting initiatives and identifying those tier 1 components. So those components that don't affect instruction, that don't affect our core competency, which is teaching students. So what's everything else that's out there that we can identify to cut costs? We need to go through that exercise and spend a lot of time doing that and then demonstrating that once we've done that, perhaps then we're faced with the tier 2 components that may be programmatic in nature. And if those components we don't want to trade off, you can look at revenue options at that point. It'd be a worthwhile exercise to go down that path.
Now your computer's plugged in.
I want to go to the next slide, sir.
SOS.
No, my mouse is moving.
I think the technology budget is going to go way down.
Let's do this, yeah. Okay, we're going to start from the beginning. No. All right. Very good. So I kind of covered this slide. It's our projections. It's the trajectory we've been on. If we were to expend Sullivan out of fund balance, that's what would happen to the fund balance. Not reflecting cash reserve, just fund balance. Here's how much that amount would drop with a continued trajectory if no change is implemented as it relates to cost cutting as well as revenue. The blue and green line represent our policy for fund balance, which is something we'll talk about. Do we want to maintain a minimum level between 10 and 50%? And that's what the current policy is. I think there's an opportunity to tighten up that particular number. Okay.
It's all of it. So horrible they were backed up.
Oh, is it an extended desktop? Is that what's happening here? Well, I can just use this mouse here. Let's do this.
The mouse gets bigger.
Is yours frozen again, Dave?
No, I'm going to carry it over here on this side. It's an extended desktop right now. We're going to keep going, everyone.
Maybe. No, you're not.
All right, if you just leave it where it was, I dragged it over because it's in an extended desktop mode right now. Yeah. So we'll just leave this. I can just look at the screen. It's absolutely okay. Okay. Now, here's a hypothetical scenario. Looking at the past few years, so with some of that deficit spending, hypothetically, if we had found $2 million in savings or $2 million in revenue or $1 million in each, what would have that fund balance look like? So that is what had occurred to your left, and you can see it would have stabilized. $2 million a year was the magic number for the past 5 years if we had had that additional cost savings or revenue. Okay, we're gonna segue into the EFMP. An estimate for the modified updated EFMP was at 51.2 million. And just logistically thinking about how that would roll out, we would probably do 1 building or 2 buildings per year in a phased approach of about $10 million a year. I think logistically that's how it would roll out as well. And how does that impact how we would issue these bonds? We would have to include some inflationary costs for year 4 and 5 if we did a 5-year rollout versus a 3. And if you recall this debt ceiling impact slide being presented, green being if we allow ourselves to use 75% of the debt limit, where would we be at? Green being a certain level where we would typically have recognition if we scored highly in everything else and we maintained a positive surplus. However, undulating into financial review if we scored low in any other component with that. And you can see if we roll this out in phases, in blue at the very far right, in calendar year 2019, out of that 42 million, we would use 14. Out of the 43 the following year, we would use 23. Out of 45, we'd be at 32. And it would be at year 6 where we would be right there at the $50 million mark. And it's a strategy that would allow us to remain at a comfortable level below our debt ceiling. This being a conservative estimate because we assumed EAV to be flat. Our debt ceiling is a function of 6.9% of the EAV. We assumed it to be flat in year 1. If there's growth, obviously that ceiling grows as well. Okay. We will have Elizabeth Hennessy back in to go over this in great detail. I just preliminarily wanted to share this with the board. This is difficult to read, but basically there are 2 options. I'm going to go to the graphics here for bond issuance. Above being existing, so these are the existing bonds that are currently outstanding. For a $300,000 home, here's how much we will be paying as it currently stands, from 525 going to 733, and then back down to 506 in 2024. So that's the current model if we do nothing. If we issue the proposed referendum, here are the implications. And when I go back to the current existing outstanding bonds, there is tax relief in 2025. So when you go from $733 a year for a $300,000 home, it drops to 506, and then it drops to nothing in 2025. So then you have tax relief. If we propose this referendum, instead of nothing, it would be 341 in 2025. The first year, it would increase slowly at $39, $70, up to $100, 166 at its greatest point in 2023, 25. This is a pretty important one.
It's 2023.
Yeah. And with this, it's an option, right? And what it does, it allows this capacity to remain as well. There is a secondary option, which is, again, looking at what we currently have and kind of extending that out. And effectively what this does, it keeps taxes flat throughout as it relates to a $300,000 home. So this includes the referendum as well as restructuring. And just kind of comparing the two, you issue the bonds on top of the existing outstanding versus actually decreasing the overall impactive costs, the immediate costs in 2019 through 2024. You're actually reducing the amount that's impacting the typical home. Okay. Now, the overall impact with the average debt payment that's laid out here on the top graph. So the first year, the increase or the decrease with the restructuring and the bond issuance, you will see it's zero here and it goes down slightly for a $400,000 home. It's relatively flat for that first year. Now, we know we're going to be adding additions with this EFMP, 140,000 square feet total plus Sullivan. We know currently as we're structured now, we've got challenges ahead of us, maintaining our budget, not deficit spending too much. By adding this growth, this square footage, adding bus routes to Sullivan, doing all of these things, are we able to identify some of these minimum mandatory costs that are going to affect us immediately? Utilities, custodians, some of the operational components. And if that dollar amount were to be, we do have a working estimate that we'll bring forward in a future meeting. If that dollar amount is $1.3 million. If we were to hypothetically think about that revenue to offset the operational costs of what we're constructing, it would amount to a 0.1% increase on the tax rate. And if you look at the calculations, this is the math. So this is how we got our tax money last year. The EAV is $1.3 billion. Our tax rate is 3.23%, and we're able to generate $42.8 million for this district. If we increase that 3.23 by 0.1%, we're at 3.33%, generating that 1.3 million. And it's about a 3% increase overall. So that's the impact if there were an operational minimum mandatory amount we wanted to identify to offset some of these costs. Are there any questions related to what I've presented?
Anybody?
Yeah, go to your expense slide,
If you can.
if you can. I have it as slide 5, but I think your slides are different. The one thing I want to ask you about is you have a decrease from 650,000.
This one, Jason?
One before that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second bullet, decrease in curricular supplies. What's the impact of that decrease?
Well, it's something we've discussed. We feel it should be minimally impactive for next year. Nick, would you like to add to that?
I think what happens would be looking at more open source options for folks instead of subscriptions. And subscriptions can be rather expensive after a while. And there are a lot of good open source options out there for some folks, but we try to limit the impact that we would have in that area. That's just one example of some things we'd be looking at.
When you say open source, does that mean that teachers are going to have to pay for it themselves? I mean, what does that mean?
No, it would be, it's open sources, materials that have been created that are free to use
Okay.
for them to go and respond to. And there's a lot of, it's just not somebody in their garage making something up. There's some materials out there. I can look up and get
Like
some
Khan
ideas.
Academy and
Yeah,
stuff.
things like that that might be available for folks to use. But it's not that the teachers would have to pay for it, and we'd give them a list of here's some areas we want to, that you might be able to use, some materials that can supplement what you're using in the classroom already. Some subscriptions get expensive. Some
Sure.
what we might do is not replace some materials as quickly as we would have in those situations.
But the idea is to have minimal impact to the kids.
Right. Yeah. Right. As far away from the kids as possible.
So if we do something like that, would it still be the case that every third grader in the district is learning the same thing? Or, I mean, I know they all have the same standards they have to hit, so I'm not worried about that. But right now, it seems like we've been spending a lot of time on these half days and stuff like that with people sort of agreeing that there would be a lot of consistency in the district. So to go undo, I don't want to do anything that's going to undo that.
The learning outcomes are still consistent. Some of the experiences that teachers have created would still be there. What tools that somebody might use would be fairly consistent, but somebody might choose to use a different resource, a different material, but still come with the same outcome. I can't, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you a particular, but really what you're trying to do is reduce your expenses in supplies areas as much as you can. But the outcomes, the expectations for the students remain, the outcomes remain. And a lot of our teachers have a lot of freedom in some of the tools they use to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
But this way, what we would be doing, we have some subscriptions that people want, but we have a very small percentage of teachers using it. We might have to say, we can't continue that subscription. We've got 10 teachers out of however many using it. And so it's not going to be renewed, save some money, but here's some open source or some other materials that you might be able to use that are similar.
Okay.
And on the next slide.
Okay.
That one. So
Okay.
you've touched on this a little bit in your presentation. So the red numbers in the right there, that's bad. We know that. So that's what you talked about in terms of between now and the budget that we're going to pass, we're going to work at reducing the red that we see there.
That is the goal. To ideally, one would like to have a balanced operating budget.
So what can we as a board do? How do we prioritize how to get there? Are we going to have some discussion as in, okay, here's some options. If we cut this is how we reduce those red numbers. This is the impact. And then we discuss on it. We kind of set some priorities. I'm just trying to understand how we're going to get to that budget that we're going to pass.
It'd be our goal by mid-July to basically at that point having a strong handle on the revenue and expenses for next year and tightening up some of these numbers. And then if we were left with a deficit budget in the ed fund like we do this year, that's within our budget. If we end up with something like that, I think we would bring forth options and alternatives to reduce that. There are components within operations and maintenance where we see an opportunity for cost savings that we haven't discussed or talked about yet. But we're looking forward to implementing that would save costs.
So when you say, you mentioned briefly touched upon the tier 1 cuts, right? The cuts that we can make to reduce our deficit. Would you be able, like in July, when you have a better handle even on revenue and expenses, would that mid-July be a good time to also look at all the tier 1? So, if we look at all the tier 1, could we get a better hand? Do you think we would have that as a district to see, if we did all of tier one, how much can we save, or how much up can we go? Or
I think there's some near-term opportunity to find some things that we've already identified. It's pending communication with the board and approval. And I think that those tier one options do exist right now, and we'll bring those forward. However, when you look at the projections and the long-term things that need to be considered, it would be a holistic approach. It would be district-wide. We would want to look at every quadrant within this district as far as opportunities.
No, definitely. These tier ones have to be also, they're not something that we do it for this year and next year. These have to be sustainable and, something that is essentially we can do away with and not affect the education. So, but, would that be, you said by mid-July you would have, we would have more clear picture on our revenue and expenses. Would that be a good time would that be the time frame where you could present this to us, the tier one cuts at least, and then some tier twos maybe?
Absolutely. It'd be that time frame. The majority of our revenue comes in the month of June. It's coming in right now, so that would have been realized by then. We've got a number of subscriptions, renewals with a lot of our software is being finalized right now for next year. We'll have a better handle on that as well. And so that would be a good time frame to present that.
Okay. Any more questions? This is a working document right now, so if anybody thinks of anything, we had the presentation, please send it to Abe so he can have the answers ready, as well as incorporate that in certain manner in our discussions, and know what you're looking for, and keep going with this to try to get that deficit down as much as possible.
So, slide 20 maybe, it's where you've got the limiting rate increase of 0.16 and 0.1.
Okay. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
To increase that limit, that would require a referendum vote, is that correct?
To increase the limit, it's done through 3 exceptions. Exploding enrollment, we don't have the requirement that would be necessary for that. It's through legislation. If a state senator wanted to pass it and the governor signed it. 2 districts had that happen this year down south. And then, it'd be, ideally, your EAV would grow and it'd be a percentage of that. The third option would be you ask a referendum question with a dollar amount that is beyond your ceiling and it passes by 2/3 vote or greater, by 67%.
No, but this is the tax rate.
For
I thought you were talking about the limiting rate. How do you increase the limiting rate?
now, how do we get that extra 0.1%?
Okay, so this is an increase to the tax levy by 0.1%. How is that done? Do you want me to go through the math here? with
No, no.
EAV?
Just-
How do we get it?
Do we just say, let's do it, and we do it?
No,
Or-
no, absolutely not.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to make it clear what it takes to get that.
No, it's not like a DSEB where through a board resolution you could do a non-referendum bond. It's not DSEB. It would be a referendum question. It
So
would be a
that would be a
secondary
referendum.
question that we're going to build it, and that's an alternative where it's a 0 increase to do the bond issuance, and the second question would be a component that would offset the operational expenses related to the construction. And so if this being cost neutral with this option, with the restructuring and the $53.2 million that's currently out there to the typical homeowner, if that's a 0 cost effect, then here are the implications to a $200,000 home. Effectively, if you pass both questions, the impact would be $62 for a $200,000 home. A $300,000 home would be $96, and a $400,000 home would be $130 a year.
This is after restructuring with our referendum and the tax rate on it.
That's correct.
Okay.
And you are filling up your debt schedule as well with this.
But it is a question that would have to
It
be
is a
asked.
question
Yeah,
that
it's a
would have to
question.
pass
It's a
by the
referendum
voters.
question.
Okay. And that's just the majority pass, right? That's not the 2/3.
No.
Just majority.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Two things. One, if you're gonna bring us some of those tier 1 and tier 2 things in July, would it be helpful between now and then if we think of anything specific we wanna know about potential cost-saving measures on to send that to you, or?
Absolutely. Please
Okay.
do, on an ongoing basis.
Okay. I'm sure I'll think of like 100 things when I walk out of here tonight and lose sleep over this. But number 2, would it be allowed under the Open Meetings Act to have him re-record this presentation on a later date, like tomorrow, to put up a coherent presentation that isn't interrupted by 1,000 technology?
Yeah, we can have him redo it. And so we
That's
don't have
okay
the
without
blinking,
open
yeah, And
session?
then put it up on the webpage and say, here's the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Because
I think we should do that.
It was not my idea to create more work for you.
Sorry. Without us here, it should probably only take you 10 minutes to run through without the blinking screen.
In his dark room?
That, the slides themselves will be available online
Yes,
too,
yes.
right?
No.
But we could do a voiceover
Yep.
and go through it without it blinking. Okay.
We have a lot of work to do.
Anything else?
When do we not?
Okay, the next, topic is Press 98. Now, I'm not going to go through all of it, but so that people can appreciate what we do. There were 56 policies and exhibits, so it's about 157 pages to go through. And really, this is the print. I don't know who makes these. This is like font 2 on anything and everything. It's like horrible to read through. But couple of things. We are going to break it up. There's no way we're going to do all of it because we'll be here forever. And Sharon said she wants to go, so we're going to get her out of here. One of the major things is the Accelerated Placement Act, which is it requires, and here's a confusion. The state passed it, but there's a conflict with it because it requires a placement to include early entrance to kindergarten and early entrance to first grade. And this is based upon the assessment of students' readiness to attend school. But it complicates the matter because it does not define early entrance to kindergarten. So this is something that the board attorney needs to sort it out and let us know, because this effective date for this is July 1st. And I don't know how we are going to sort this out because if ISB says there's a conflict and the lawyers are saying there's a conflict, we need to figure out what we want to do. So if you could please look at Rob and ask them, what are we supposed to do? Because we have to at least meet or have something ready for the July 1st date that we are expected to meet according to the.
And there's some work, I do know there's some superintendents working with some legislators to do an amendment or a change to clarify the confusion that it contradicts itself in several locations.
Okay.
So we'll
I'm
get
going to
that.
quickly go through a couple of them. There's only a couple of them that really need some looking into. So some of them I'm going to just read. The ones that we need to we'll spend. So 2.105, this is an ethics and gifts ban. The policy is unchanged. The footnote is updated according to the Grant Accountability Transparency Act. 2.170, this is the procurement of architectural, engineering, and land surveying services. I don't know why they want me to go through it when it's not changed. 2.170, this is an administrative procedure, qualification-based selection procedures describing how to procure architectural, engineering, and land surveying services. It allows district to advertise on its website and email notices of proposed projects. We can also advertise for our projects in newspapers. 4.20, this is the important one. This is the fund balances. Our policy, the Hawthorne District 73, states that we should have 10 to 50% of annual expenditure in each fund. 10 to 50 is a huge range. I wanted to know what, if district maintains fund balance 2 or more times the average expenditure of that fund, it may face tax rate objection on excess accumulation of funds. This is over a 3-year fiscal period. I don't think we are going to land up with that after running into deficits. But our fund balance policy is 10 to 50%. Abe, what do you think about this? Do you want to, should we relook at this?
Yes, I think if you're going to say that you want your fund balance to be no less than a certain amount, that minimum, that floor should not be 10 to 50%. I would have it be 25%. That would be ideal. I just think the range is too big for a minimum amount.
So you think the top should still be 50? Or what are you recommending?
To a great degree, fund balance being an arbitrary number. I look at cash reserve and we talk about how much we want to invest and how much we want to expend out of for construction, things like that. It does correlate mathematically to the fund balance as well. I think, let's see, we're at like 67% right now. I'm gonna have to double check that number. But my recommendation is to revise it. I think it needs to be wordsmith. I think we want to look at some of our neighbors, some of our peer districts, and see what verbiage they have for fund balance.
So
But
could
I
you
don't think
bring
it's
us a
sufficient.
Could you
right
bring
now.
us a recommendation next time and we could take a look at it and see what we want to do about the policy?
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
The next is 4:50. It's an exhibit. It's a school district payment order, allows treasurer to pay bills or obligation before minutes are approved. This exhibit is unchanged. 4:55E. This exhibit is also unchanged. It's a cardholder statement affirming familiarity with requirements for using district credit card or procurement cards. 4:60 AP Administrative Procedure 2. This procedure is updated. This is a third-party non-instructional contract such as custodial, student transportation, and school meal services. This is an administrative procedure. 4:140. This policy is updated. This is a waiver of student fees. So in this, they have essentially just added that instead of it being specific to free and reduced, it is like if the student meets the requirements of fee waiver. So they've just changed the language, but it seems to be okay. 5:20, it's an administrative procedure. It's sample questions and considerations for conducting the internal harassment in workplace investigation. This procedure has been updated. 6:10, this is educational philosophy and objectives. This policy is unchanged. 6:30, organization of instruction. In this, the policy is essentially unchanged, but they wanted us to add, because it's an organization of instruction, so it essentially states that our school does pre-K through 8th grade and the kindergarten is a full day program. And the footnote suggests that the board should consider a description of the pre-K program in the policy itself. Whether it is needed or not needed, they've just asked us if we can consider it if we want to. So that's 6:30. So if we want to take a look at it.
Do we get a lot of demand for that description?
I have no idea. ISB told us. 6:40. It's an administrative procedure, curriculum development. Procedure is unchanged. 6:60. It's an exhibit. The notice to parents or guardians of students enrolled in family life and sex education classes. Language added to more accurately reflect the statutory requirements. We don't have to do anything. It's an exhibit. 6:120. Education of children with disabilities. The policy is updated in minor style changes, so there's nothing to do about it. 6:190, extracurricular and co-curricular activities. The policy is unchanged. 6:220, this is BYOT, Bring Your Own Technology Program. We don't have it, so we don't have to do anything with it. It's not even in our policy manual. 6:220E1, it's an authorization to participate in Bring Your Own Technology. We don't need it. 6:222E, it's again, Bring Your Own Technology, student guidelines. We don't have it, so we don't need to worry about it. 6:230, it's a library media program. The policy is updated with minor style changes, nothing to do there. 6:240, it's a field trips. The district, in this, the footnotes and the policy is updated. Its policy is updated to reflect that the district will pay for students who qualify for fee waivers. They want us to change a verb in a sentence. So the field trips are, they want us to use the verb encouraged instead of permissible. So field trips are encouraged when the experiences are part of school curriculum and or contribute to district's educational objectives. The current policy is written with the word permissible. Do we want to change it to the word encouraged? And let me know next time. 6:248P is an administrative procedure. It's a procedure is updated. It's a field trip guidelines. 6:250, the policy and footnotes are updated. This is the community resource person and volunteers. Schools may use resource persons and volunteers for crisis intervention services. The superintendent will follow the board policy 4:175, convicted child sex offender screening notifications to establish these procedures. That's the update on it. So if you could tell me if you want the verb change from permissible to encourage on 6:240, Abe will get back to us on 4:20 about the fund balances. Those are about the only two. And if you could check with the legal about advanced placement, since July 1st is the deadline for enacting it. That's it for press.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali.
Thank you.
The next is President's report. I have a couple of statements to make to the community, and these are legal statements, so they are verbatim from legal counsel. I'm going to read them, and we're going to move on.
Okay.
With the transition of our superintendent and other important personnel developments, we would like to take the moment to remind everyone that board members and district administrators are required to keep personnel matters confidential to protect the civil rights of our employees. The legal obligations imposed on the district require that we not comment on confidential personnel matters. While there are many times in which we all wish we could say more in response to a personnel issue or to respond to questions on personnel issue, we simply cannot, as such, is not in the best interest of the district. Please know that when asked by members of the public and about district personnel matters, board members are not at the liberty to have such discussions. If anyone has a question or comment about personal matters, those questions should be directed to the district office personnel, Lynn Barkley.
You're welcome.
The next statement, this is regarding the contract. The district and the HEA leadership reached a tentative agreement on their successor collective bargaining agreement after numerous productive bargaining sessions. The HEA leadership took the contract based on a tentative agreement to their membership for ratification on June 4th, which subsequently failed with a majority vote. The board and the administration are disappointed with this outcome and will abide by its continued bargaining obligations. The district is ready and willing to return to the table to resolve the issues leading to the failed ratification of the fully bargained contract in an effort to avoid impasse. We hope to receive proposed dates from the HEA in the near future. Discussion, Superintendent's report, the portable update, which happened on June 6th.
We did go to the village and ask for permission to extend the portables for another 2 years. I would like to personally thank Abe and Sonali and Matt for coming with me to that meeting, and let you know that there was a motion. It did pass, and so we can extend the portable use for an additional 2 years while we determine our needs.
No elementary South teachers going, yay! Discussion items. The first, I'm going to go through the quick easy ones before, and then we'll go back. The first one is the intergovernmental agreement extension at Lincoln with Mundelein 75 and Fremont 79.
It is the time of year to extend it. There is nothing changed in the agreement, and every year the business managers calculate any of the costs to see how that works out. So I would recommend that we approve that and continue. It's an excellent partnership with the other districts.
And this extension of agreement will be for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's from 2018-19 through 2021. Okay. Any questions? How many kids do we have at Lincoln? 187, 190 right now?
Close to that. One, yeah. Somewhere in there.
We don't have a.
Right now, currently 0. It's summer, but during the enrollment.
But they start
Sorry, I had to
much
just put that
earlier,
in.
right?
Yeah,
They're back
right.
in summer.
But we're running around between the 162 to 172 last year, and we expect it to spike up into the 180s.
Have we used, I know a part of our agreement is that if we have more kids and Lincoln or, Mundelein or Fremont are not using the capacity, we can. Did we do that last year or no? The next is full-day kindergarten tuition. This was a topic that came up at the last community meeting, so we would like to answer that.
Yes. When we went through the reorganization planning, the folks on the committee looked at all aspects of the district, and that there was a recommendation made to the board to offer full-day kindergarten tuition free to all the students. It does align with our strategic plan to try to provide equitable access to high-quality programs, to improve our early childhood educational opportunities. We also felt it was a chance to help bridge the gap where we have some achievement gaps occurring. The tuition was $4,000, and there was a thought that those that needed it might not be able to afford it, and so it was made tuition free for all to go full-day kindergarten. And it was, again, it supported the strategic plan for equitable access to programs and early childhood interventions. And we're hoping to see some big outcomes for those students as they progress into the upper grades. But it was something that was supported at that time. We did offer a tuition-based, I think it was approved the year before it came for the first year when we got here. But not all the students were able to access it.
Any questions regarding that?
Do all the surrounding areas have,
Pardon me?
Okay,
can you give us a sense of the surrounding areas and their full-day program and who charges and who doesn't?
I
have.
103 charges.
Pardon me?
103 charges.
Yeah, I have some information. Let me look real quick.
You had sent it
I did
out
send it out.
What I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know,
for the public.
Right. I just
Here,
wanted.
I'll read it.
Oh, thank you, and I apologize.
Aptekissic Trip 102, they charge $295 per month for 9 months. Fremont 79 charges $3,500 total. Killdeer Countryside 96 charges $1,750. Lincolnshire Prairie View 103 charges $3,788. Libertyville 70, there's no additional fee assessed, just the registration fee. And Mundelein 75, it's only the registration fee and no additional fee is assessed for them. Thanks.
So I have a question. I don't want to get burned at the stake for this, but is it worth looking at doing a hybrid of what we do now and what we used to do, which is, so you offer full day for tuition, but for the children that need it, who can't afford it, we pay. I mean, that's basically what we used to do, was no tuition-based program. It was just if you needed the extra help, you were kept the whole day at the district's expense, and it was just a handful of kindergartners each year. I think in each building it was probably around 15 or so. Is it worth relooking at that? I mean, I don't like to take that away before we've really seen the full outcome
Right.
of the full day for everybody, because I'm hoping that pays off. But
I would think that I don't myself think it would be worth looking at that. It's a little early, and let the program expand. We had that experience. The students, most of our students are going. If you have a half day, they're going somewhere else besides home. They're going to some other location. So I think keeping them with us and our quality staff is the best thing for the students. There's less transitions for the parents and for the students during the day. I myself think it's one of the best things you can offer to those that are in need. And we did have a tuition, and you had some students that have need, but every student getting more contact time with our staff grows and improves from that. So the board could ask, and we can do an analysis, but I don't know that I don't know that it would be a good decision to reduce that at this point for our students and some of our community members that need it.
that'd be something for the Financial Advisory Task Force to possibly look at. The Financial task force that's reconvening?
Yeah, we can have
Right.
them
That's
look
just
at that.
I
another
mean, I'm not
topic.
sure I'm suggesting we reduce it so much as,
Right.
do we charge for it? And I wasn't on the board at the time those decisions were made, but as a parent in the community, it wasn't that I didn't want my child in some kind of enrichment for part of the day. It was that it wasn't available at the building my kids went to.
Right.
So that was a big deal because if you started them off in kindergarten in a different building, you couldn't necessarily go to your option school, which of course now is not really the case. But I just think,
It was not available in all buildings.
right.
The Financial Advisory Task Force could look at that if you wanted to.
Board agenda software systems.
You've received some information, also a YouTube video. You can use the full product that was recommended, or you could do the light and then expand to the full. We've looked into that. At one point, there was a conversation, kind of when do you start? I would, in conversations with folks, I think it's best to not wait till August to pick the software if you're going to use it, because that's the start of the school year. So if you could pick in July, so that everybody have a chance to get trained up and running on it, you get a chance to experience it. So you're not experiencing it in the heat of the starting of the school year. I still think that the recommended software is the best, but you can go light. And there was some information, like I said, we provided you YouTube. There's some opportunities for you to experience it with some folks.
Did the tentative budget assume we would adopt one of those? Or not?
Good question.
It does not currently.
Red's getting redder.
It's a no for me.
That's
This is a bad night to ask about
no,
that.
but it's like no money anywhere. Okay. So what do we want to do about it? Do we want to come back and visit it? Because the light one is about $4,000. Even if we do the board docs. What is the light one? The light.
Can I hop in here too?
Sure.
We have talked about the Let's Talk several times, and we left it in as we're going through the process. I forget exactly how much that is. I think it's somewhere between 6,000 or 9,000. You could reduce or not renew your subscription to Let's Talk and invest that money into the board docs if you thought it would be more available to you. There are many ways for folks to contact the district, and I'll send a report tomorrow on how many we've gotten. Right now, I think we've had 45 Let's Talks through the year. If you think of how many days and how many topics we have, it's not a lot. But I'll generate a report and send it to you so you can have that and try to make a decision if that's still a tool you want to have available for your community.
When is our subscription for Let's Talk? When is the date for renewal for that?
I'll have to double check, but I think it's coming up into the fall.
Okay.
Are there options to like downgrade Let's Talk, but still keeps a little bit of it, or
We've
are
got
we
the
like at the bottom
we've got
barrel?
We have the
we've got
minimum.
light, so to speak. We've got
Okay.
the smallest version right now.
Okay.
Can't there just be a link to that, email the board?
Right. Exactly.
That is there. I mean,
Right,
that is there on all our
so-
names.
We could put
There's no-
something
if you
instead of
don't-
Let's Talk button. We could put a button that just says, if you'd like to email the board, press and then go that
It's
way.
not anonymous though, right?
Right.
Then, right?
So the question is, out of those 45, do we know approximately how many were anonymous?
Yeah, we do.
I can run you a report and let you know. It'll tell you the subject matter, and it'll tell you if they were anonymous or if not.
Thank you.
I'll run a report. I don't know off the top of my head.
But are they worth?
That's really
let's
it,
say
right?
$9,000,
Is it-
like
Right.
Right.
overall, whether it's anonymous or not, if all you got was 45 for $8,000, is it worth keeping it for that much versus,
Well, is
something-
it, right.
I
Is it
mean-
feedback we can respond to? Is it feedback that is
Use
pushing us
Actionable.
forward and useful? Is it gossip and nobody's willing to put their name to it?
like I said, I can get you a report and get you some information on that.
Okay, I mean, my instinct about the board books thing is, I think when Julie brought it up, I had said, yes, also these other districts I'm looking at do have something like that, and I think it's a good idea for transparency. I'm just thinking we may want to troubleshoot other ways to improve transparency without spending another $12,000 per year. I mean, with everything going on, I know in the grand scheme of things, $12,000 isn't a lot, but it's all adding up right now.
I mean, I don't think it would be terrible to start with the light version as just to kind of, see how it works, but
We can look at it and look at what
Especially if we
Let's
can get
Talk
it
is
with Let's
costing
Talk,
us and see if we can
absolutely.
make a trade-off of some.
absolutely.
All right.
So we'll talk about this next meeting. We'll compare it to see if we can trade in the Let's Talk, what we after we get the report on Let's Talk and see how many we get for the money that we are spending. The next thing is the Village of Vernon Hills trustee letter. You had a draft of the letter last time. The question is, do you want to make any modifications to that letter, and how should we deliver that letter? Both those things are for.
I think you and Matt should go deliver that letter.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go.
I was gonna say, I don't know how.
I'm ready.
And if we're delivering it, are we taking it at a public comment and reading it? Is that what we want to do?
I've said before that I think that we should set the example about going to the village and speaking in public and open meeting, and hoping that residents would follow our lead. Because I think it's hard to hear sometimes. I mean, I might be guilty of saying it too, of, well, some of these problems aren't our fault. Go talk to the village. Well, I think that if we go talk to the village, and I know we've sent letters and we've done things, but I think it needs to be out there in the open that, we're going to stand our ground and we hope our residents support us. So I'm up for
More than last week? Sure.
Yeah, I didn't have the privilege, and I think I've apologized to everybody because I watched that vigorously, except sorry, Abe, sorry you had to deal with that. But I'm willing to stand beside you guys. I mean, it's not, I'm not afraid.
That's what, so do we can address the letter to each one of them and hand it to each of the trustees, as well as, take it that's what I'm looking for, is like, do we want to go and read it at an open session? Is that how
Yes.
is that? And do we want to make any
Yes.
modifications? Okay, we want to do that.
If we're going to send it, I would read it out loud, yes.
Okay, so we'll go there, we'll read it out loud.
When's the
When is their
one?
next meeting? So do we have to?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I double checked that, but I'm pretty sure.
You'll be there?
No, we will. So do we
And
have
Mike,
to?
you're gonna speak
do we
right
have
after
to
us?
Make an appointment for a public comment, or can we just go in?
No, you go in. I mean, you can email them and tell them you'd like to make a public comment on the topic, but
Okay.
we can also, I mean, we're in an open meeting. It's not going to be a surprise now, but.
No, but I mean, it's also a courtesy. Do we let them know that we're
I
coming?
would.
If it's a specific person who wants to, they sometimes let us know that they want to.
They're
come.
claiming we aren't communicating, so I say we communicate over the top with them.
Yes.
Matt?
And I can let Mr. Carey know.
Is the
Yes.
asbestos suit in the
We'll be
budget?
coming to the night.
Sorry.
Is the asbestos suit in the budget?
Kevlar.
Kevlar vest?
Abe is going to look into it. Okay, so that's that. The next topic is the kindergarten building construction value engineering. We had the bids. The bids came high. After that, LAMP had asked us for time to look at everything that could be value engineered. So they gave us all the items, and it was a list of about 49 of them that they thought we could value engineer. After we looked through all of those, LAMP and DLR split them in 3 categories. One was recommend, consider, or avoid acceptance. We didn't want to change the plan of the kindergarten building or change the educational value that we are providing for our students in that building to an extent. So to an extent where it wouldn't be what we envisioned for our students. So looking at that value engineering piece, so the total building came at 14.7,
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
Yes? Yes. So the total building came at 14.7. Out of that, if you value engineered, the value engineering is at 1,193,000, so about 1.2 million. That is all in value engineering, out of which $673,000 is an avoidance by recommendation of DLR. So they would not want you to change some of those specifics on it. So that means we have only about 520,000 to play with. You had a question and answer email that came, which Abe and Mike looked at, and they gave their opinion on some of it from the educational perspective of what they would want or not. We can go through it line by line item or something. So that 14.7, we can see how much we can bring down to. with some of them are accepted, some of them are, a couple of them are the HVAC, which Mike had said we still needed to look into some of the modifications if they would work with some of the systems, right? So I remember that. So do we want to look through it? Do we want to let Mike and Abe take a look at it and tell us what the final amount will be, knowing what is okay as an acceptance and what is not? How do we want to do it? So I want to give an example to people who are watching us. And let me tell you.
No, it's these Sonali's.
Okay, so here is the thing. So one of the items was 16. Okay, where is it? Okay, so it was one of the value engineering was to provide standard Type-X drywall instead of a high-impact drywall. And this type of change would reduce durability and it would cause increased maintenance. High-impact drywalls are more resistant to abrasion and impacts resulting from everyday wear and tear from the kindergarten occupants. Substituting standard drywall for high-impact drywall will reduce the durability of the interior wall partitions and require patching and painting more often over the life of the building. So this was a type of an item that was avoid acceptance because it changes the durability and function of what we want, and it requires higher maintenance over the life of it. Some of the things were, which was change the roller shades to louvered blinds. And this was an accepted change. Mike and Abe both said it was this, even though it reduced durability, the reason for that, they said it was okay, is because the roller shades are more expensive to replace after if something happens to them. And we've had some around. Mike, jump in if I'm not saying something right.
You're on target.
Thank you.
Okay, so they are more expensive to substitute, to replace. So Mike and Abe both said that, yes, changing the roller shades to the louvered mini blinds was okay. And so that was a savings of about $10,000. So there's a line-by-line item for the 49 of them that we've gone through. So I wanted to know if you wanted to go through each item by item or let Mike deal with it and tell us how much can we bring this down from the 14.7 eventually. And this 14.7 does not include what has been kind of the funding from the Village of Vernon Hills or the village from the Park District. And that's why that number is higher. So if the community looks at it and says, hey, why are you saying 14.7? Because this does not include any funding from any resources right now. It's the total amount. Once that funding comes in and we have a guarantee of that funding, that number will start dropping. So right now, this is all in just with our own value engineering. Tom is here, Mike is here, Abe is here. Anybody have any questions regarding the value engineering?
So do we want to go through and talk about the ones that say consider acceptance?
I can if you want to. I have the
If you want
list.
to bring up, so I went through them all and I had no real issues with their assessment. So is there any ones that anyone disagrees with, then we can,
Well, not
Discuss it.
necessarily, but if it says consider acceptance, that's not necessarily recommend or not recommend. So where do we fall on that?
There was that's why on the consider acceptance, there was all of them were listed. Did you, there was a question and answer sheet that came, which said everything that was.
Via email, you gotta,
Yeah, I got it.
okay,
Wasn't that Sonali's opinion? What-
no.
it was from Sonali.
Right.
The email was from me, but it was Mike and Abe's about what should and what should
Yeah,
not be.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
I just,
So amongst all the consider or recommend acceptance, if there's some that you think should not be or done, we can check on that and get their opinion since they are here. Avoid acceptance, we avoided all of them.
right,
We're not going to change any of them.
right. I'm just talking about the stuff in the middle.
Yeah, there are two columns. One is recommend and one is consider. So
I mean, mine is not set up like columns. That's why I'm having trouble with weeding through.
it was a memo that LAMP had sent us on June 11th.
Yeah, okay. Today is June 11th.
No, what was
You know it is.
no, today is, but they had sent us, the memo came a few days ago.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, so that has columns in it.
Would it be helpful
Okay.
for the board members
Mine doesn't
to
have columns, but that's okay.
send the questions to Abe and Michael to review?
Yeah, I mean, they can send them to, whichever ones among recommend and consider they have.
No, I've
If
got-
there's something specific, or if you have something specific,
Just,
I mean, they both are here,
Right,
so we can go.
that's from
Mike,
Abe and Mike, right?
Yeah.
Right, no comments. And then I have the other one here.
I'm just saying it's ultimately up to us to decide what's going to be spent on this. And it's ultimately up to us to decide, to set the goal, to see what's going to hit our goal for student outcomes and what's going to impact it or not impact it. So we can take these recommendations and that's all fine and good. And I think those things do matter from the standpoint that I have no expertise as a facilities manager, that's for darn sure. Heck, my house is falling apart. So that's fine, but I think we should discuss it as a board. I think I appreciate your memo and your thoughts, but we haven't even discussed it as a board as to whether or not we want to take those recommendations or tweak any of them.
That's what this is.
I know, but when I'm bringing it up, I'm being told, no, it's already in the memo. No, that was your opinion after talking with Mike and Abe. We haven't talked about it as a board. This is what I'm saying. I don't know if I'm saying it incorrectly, but
That's what I'm asking, is like, when we have the consider and the recommend, on top of that, it was Mike and Abe's, what was the educationally they thought, as well as the maintenance and facilities wise. So based on all those question and answers that you saw that came from board members and their responses, if there's anything more, then this is the time to discuss. That's what I'm saying, is like, because we have all the columns
Okay.
and all the things.
okay.
So
I guess mine just isn't set up quite as neatly as you're saying. So for me, it's a little harder to just sift through because the not recommended, recommended, and consider recommended are all mixed in together. So it's not quite so cut and dry. But
Maybe a question
Go
would be,
ahead.
when should the board, what's sort of a deadline? I apologize. But what's the expected date that the board should make this decision so that it can be, continue the project moving forward? So does it need to be made today? Does it need to be made for the next board meeting? Or is July an opportunity so the board can have an in-depth conversation and review? I'm sorry.
I think we're struggling to figure out what document we're talking about,
Turn to this.
because I've got an email.
The one from LAMP
From
is the
Mike
only
and
one I
Abe.
have in columns, but that is not what says something's
Yeah.
recommended or not. It just says what we would save if we cut it.
Right, and then there was the DLR memo that was revised on May 29th, which is not in columns. And then the document that we received from Sonali, that was from Abe and Mike, that was the summary of what DLR revised on May 29th, correct? Okay,
it wasn't a summary, it was amongst some of them, if it was what would be acceptable and what wouldn't be
okay.
on that. Between the consider and recommended acceptance, which ones should stay and which ones should not be accepted on that one.
So everyone's looking at that list right now with the red text, right?
Mhm.
All right, there's a dozen, maybe 2 dozen items. You want to just go through each one and say, yes, we take their recommendation, or we want to discuss it? Blow through them, or, we spent more time discussing what we're talking about than just discussing them, so.
Agreed.
So, okay, do you want to start? So the first one is the change maker space. So we are going to go only through the recommend and consider acceptance, right? Recommend acceptance and consider acceptance.
Sure.
We're not going to go through any of the avoid acceptance spaces, are we?
Just that
That's
the
fine.
VE kindergarten one that you sent out to us.
Right.
Yeah.
The one that I sent?
Yes.
Yeah, the one from
Okay.
Mike and Abe.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, I would have done the other, okay.
Okay, whichever one.
Because that's where they say, here's a rationale to do it or not. Here's a
Right.
rationale not to do
It's
it.
hard without seeing them next to each other, but it's okay. I'll flip back and forth. So the first one is number 6 on DLR's memo, right?
Yeah, eliminate compression bracing.
Recommended acceptance. if they're recommending it,
This is an eliminate compression bracing and storm shelter. This would not be required by the precast contractor for their design. Both Abe and Mike suggest that we need independent engineering analysis to make sure before we can eliminate the compression bracing. So, do we want to follow Mike and Abe's recommendation, or do we want to accept it?
why would we need independent engineering consultation on this?
Well, with the storm shelter, we're already paying for that. We just
Right.
want to confirm that that's been done prior to accepting that. We just want to double check and make sure that that's been followed up on, at which point you could proceed with that.
Any comments?
This may just be above my pay grade. I'm
I think we're,
not at all understanding
Okay.
why, when we have DLR and LAMP's consultation about whether this would still be structurally acceptable, why we would need another independent engineer. I mean, I'm assuming LAMP and DLR both have engineers looking at this. Am I not understanding what the holdup is?
We just want to double check to make sure that that has been met, that that's been completed. Is there anything you'd like to add, if the board's okay with that, if we can have Mr.
Yeah, sure.
Christensen approach?
Anybody that can shed light?
He's been involved in this conversation as well.
Please.
So my thoughts on this particular one is when the original review was done by the outside reviewer,
Uh-huh,
the compression bracing was there.
right.
So we're removing that after they've done their review, based on what the manufacturer of the precaster says.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Now it makes sense.
So now we're
Okay.
doing something that's outside the scope of what they looked at.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So that's why we're not going to accept, we are going to check that and then we'll accept it based on how the independent engineering comes back. The
Okay.
next one was eliminate waterproofing at frost wall. It was a consider acceptance. Mike and Abe say no.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree with that too.
Especially with it being near the wetland.
Okay, next one was eliminate drainage mat and masonry wall cavity, eliminate the drainage wall and provide typical mortar net. And this is, it was okay. It was okay to accept it, the change. It was consider acceptance and they both said it was okay to accept that change.
Okay.
Reduce the size of the entrance canopy by 50%. This was a consider acceptance and both of them said no because it changes the functional. They've given their explanations on that too. Because it's based on the population, it protects the students during drop off and pickup, so reducing the entrance canopy was not recommended by them.
Agreed.
Okay.
Well, like, I have a question though. You take a building like Town Line that has an extremely small canopy. It may not be ideal on certain days, but certainly nobody's unsafe out there. So is it worth saving 22 grand to reduce it?
If we had the choice of putting a canopy on Town Line, would we put it or not?
Well, I mean, if money were no object, sure.
Yeah, because, I mean,
But like right now, if you go from the bus into Town Line where they enter, you have zero canopy whatsoever. If you're waiting at the curb, you have a very small canopy.
no, I agree.
Like, you know, I don't love that small canopy on a rainy day, but
I mean, that's the reason.
I don't think
why-
anybody's been unsafe. Certainly isn't impacting student outcomes.
Ultimately, you're building a building, so, you know, it's I understand.
Yeah, but I mean, we gotta make cuts somewhere. I would be in favor of cutting that. It's not eliminating the canopy entirely, it's reducing it.
Okay. Jason?
I'll go with Abe. Keep it.
Julie?
Oh, boy. I would say that it's something we could cut.
Wes?
And this has nothing to do with the structural makeup of the building, it's just protection from rain.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I'm gonna have to, it's $22,000 we can spend elsewhere.
Or not spend it all.
That's a,
So?
So I think she's saying to cut it.
Wes, Scott?
yes.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, I think, I mean, other than Town Line, none of the schools really have a canopy anyways. So, I mean, I understand the
even-
population is smaller, but no, we were also talking about drop-off not really being there anyways, right? With the drive, so I'd rather not spend the 22 or move it somewhere else. So I'd say reduce it.
Okay.
Support.
So that's, next, provide painted handrails instead of stainless steel. This was checked as okay. Eliminate all phenolic wall panels, Trespa, and change to direct applied synthetic stucco finish similar to EIFS, which we still have as soffits. This was checked as no.
Wait, where are you right now?
Sonali, I have a question. Can we go back to the painted handrails
Yes.
versus steel? Is that going to be an increased maintenance cost? Because they're gonna have to be painted. And what's,
Yes, there will be.
okay,
I think the hard part is not knowing how much we would save.
right.
Because if it's gonna cost us $2,000 a year in maintenance, and it's only gonna save us, $5,
Right.
that's not worth it. But it's hard to know because they didn't attach a dollar amount to.
I would say going around the district right now, handrails are not painted here on a consistent basis. They go years.
Great.
As I look around the district. So the annual cost is not huge.
Okay.
There is a cost though.
Phenolic walls.
I mean, do stainless steel handrails have any benefit from, I don't want to say an antibacterial standpoint, but isn't stainless steel supposed to be better from a germ standpoint than,
I don't know that I can speak.
I mean,
to
these are
that
kindergartners
question.
that will use the handrail all the time. It's not fifth
Yeah.
graders that'll take them 3 steps at a time.
Right.
Okay. I mean, if they recommend acceptance and they can't attach a dollar amount to it, then
Yeah.
it's fine.
Eliminate phenolic wall panels.
I don't know what that is.
Hmm?
I said I wouldn't even know
No,
the answer to that, so.
it seems like the answer is also unclear. I would need more info on that one.
Can I
If
say
it's-
something?
If I can just get a point of clarification here real quick, Tom, is that in the restrooms? The phenolic panels?
It's kind of scattered all over. Those are some on the interior stairwells. It's not in the bathrooms.
Okay. So it's a wall protection, decorative.
Yeah, it's more of a decorative.
Is this interior or exterior?
Interior.
Interior.
Okay. I was gonna say I would not put synthetic stucco exterior. Okay. Did that to my own house once. It was a big mistake.
So is it okay to take it off then? Acceptance?
I would remove it.
That's fine.
Remove it.
Okay.
We already talked about roller shades, right?
We already talked about roller shades. Change
Roller
the
shades?
barrier.
We talked about that already.
Replace, change vapor barrier under the roof membrane.
They say it's fine, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Let me try to reconcile what DLR said with what they said. So it's not gonna affect the performance of the roof?
I don't believe so, no.
What about the lifespan of the roof?
That section of it shouldn't. It's not the top coat. It's the membrane under it. If you tore through your top layer, then yeah, you're gonna impact your layers below, but
I would just think when I hear a vapor barrier, I think of things that would keep out condensation, mold, things that are gonna get really expensive if they fail. So what quality are we giving up to change the vapor barrier?
Would the board like to invite Mr. Tom McGrath up here since he's already present?
Like I said, anybody that can
and,
shed light.
yeah.
DLR.
So I believe a 10 mil would be standard
Yeah,
as a
it's-
30-year
yeah,
product.
it's very standard, probably
Yeah.
what you have on all your roofs right now, even if you have a vapor barrier, to be honest with you, so. It's kind of a newer method, but.
Is that what we're going down to is 10 mil?
Yeah, I think, I
Was
can't remember if it was a 20 or
20.
15, yeah, but,
Okay.
it was just offered up by the roofing contractor, like I said, when they go through the documents, they see stuff that, oh, you know, maybe you could save a little bit by doing something like that, but warranty, everything stays the same. Just dropping the thickness of the plastic.
Right.
I find it just sort of frustrating that why was something more expensive recommended in the first place if something less expensive can do just as good of a job for just as long of a time? I think that's where I'm getting lost here, is I'm going, we must be giving up something, right? Otherwise, were they just trying to make more money? Like, why were they recommending a different product if something less expensive can do the same job?
That would be a question for DLR to answer.
For who, Dan?
Well,
DLR.
We don't write the specs.
No, I know, but I mean, is it DLR? Is it the roofing contractor? Like, I don't know, but I mean,
Well, some of this is like your Chevy will get you from point A to point B and do the job.
but this isn't
But now
aesthetic. This
you're
isn't like saying I want a Jaguar
BMW.
versus a Chevy. This is
Well,
like, you know.
You're just saying performance-wise. Well, yes, they do the job, what they're supposed to do, but some do a little better, some give you a little more stuff. I think that's the difference is, I think when they spec'd it out, oh, we can throw in 20 mil instead of 10.
Many architects, and I can't speak for DLR on this one, but many architects have set kind of standards that they like to operate within. So they have a tendency to spec the same type of roof. That's kind of what they build into their projects.
Mhm.
It may not be typical, it may not be what everybody else does, but it's where their comfort level is. Same thing, I think there were some questions as it relates to wall pinning in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the question of DLR, and that was their standard specification that they use within their office. There's other ways to do it that are perfectly acceptable, but that's how they design. So a lot of it is the architect's preference.
I'm fine with 10 mil.
I'm fine with that too. I just,
So changing it, right? Which is
yeah.
Going with the recommendation.
giving with the recommendation,
Just
which was
three.
okay.
Do we have 4?
I agree with the recommendation.
There we go.
Semi-concealed casework to melamine.
Fine with the recommendation.
Fine.
Change concealed casework to exposed particle board.
Fine with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Revise elevator sump pump size.
Hold on that
Yeah,
one.
well, agreed as long as we pass, meets the code.
So you're taking
It
the
will meet code. It
recommendation.
was just, sometimes it's, they're putting the sump pit inside the elevator pit. Some engineers like to have it outside because there can be coordination issues, things like that.
Right.
The way our plumber looked at it, he thought that it could fit just fine in the pit, so that's just, we're going off of his recommendation. Maybe in the field, it turns out that it doesn't, or, maybe we go back to the way it's originally designed, but for now, it could be an easy one to just, if he thinks he can do it, we could go with his recommendation, and it'll be to code and
Okay.
all that stuff. It was just kind of a
That
worst
is-
case scenario measure, I think. in
That's
case it
very
didn't fit.
common as well, to
Okay.
have the pit within the shaftway.
Okay. I'm fine with that then.
Yep.
HVAC, which we have to come back with to see if it interfaces with our existing BS platform, so we don't have an answer for that right now,
Okay.
Correct.
right? Reduce canopy size, we agreed we are going to reduce this, replace 4-bow wall surfaces.
Fine with the recommendation.
Can I just ask what a Forvo is?
I know. That's what I'm trying to see.
It's like Kleenex. It's just a brand name of a. It's actually a
Okay.
flooring product that they put on the wall
wall,
sometimes.
okay.
It uses tack boards. So
Oh,
it's just.
So it's the brand name.
In a way, sometimes, yeah. I mean, it is probably a high quality product, but than just a tack. But it's.
Are there
And-
comparable products?
Yeah,
Is
it's
it something
comparable.
that you're just paying for the name,
I
or is it
know, I
worth
don't-
paying for the name?
I probably would think it's worth. You get what you pay for.
So like Heinz ketchup, like
Yeah.
like this.
You
is
know
one
you don't want
thing.
red gold.
You know,
It's. I mean, it's common to use it as an application on the as a wall surface.
Is it getting something for us educationally, or
Yeah.
is it just
Yes.
fun?
Well, it's like your tack board. Like the teachers need a tack board. In the
Okay.
room, so it's either you put.
So it's
up
this or that?
Yes. So they're gonna have some sort of a tack board.
Gotcha. Okay.
We just would have to look at the areas. Right now, I don't know if it's a whole wall. Maybe we just go to a 4x4 tack board or something like that. It was just an area to kinda,
Okay.
investigate a little bit further.
this is a particular brand of product that our teachers have a preference for, or this is again a deal with.
No, like I don't know if it's a preference by the architect or the teacher. I think it's just a product that we see in specs all the time, actually. But there are other products you can use, basically. So.
Epoxy paint instead of ceramic tiles.
I would stay sick with ceramic.
I would stay with ceramic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the recommendation.
Reducing casework at staff classrooms.
I will agree with the recommendation.
Remove solid surface sills.
Can we all get a little? We got one person answering and we're moving on.
Okay, go ahead.
Just want everyone to be able to have a voice,
I'm for the.
so.
I'm for the ceramic tiles and reducing the casework.
Ditto Jacobs.
Remove solid surface sills.
I think I would rather keep those as well.
Keep those as
Set-
what?
So you're
Solid
talking about
surface?
putting drywall in as a sill? Is that what?
I would not want to
I
put drywall.
would.
I would not either.
Drywall.
So
That's not going to
Sure.
withstand.
Recommendation, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Reduce playground equipment.
I'm not in favor of that.
Recommendation.
Change to bark chips.
Wait, can I ask a question about the playground equipment? I wish I knew what part of the playgrounds would be reduced, because there are certainly parts of the playground at any given recess that are not being used. So if it's something that kids just don't gravitate towards but can save us money, can we look at that?
Well, I think you have a budget item, an amount for playground equipment. You want
Right.
to stay at that or a little less if you can, but
Right.
until you actually have the design of what you think is going to be
Right,
put
but I
out
just-
there. Right.
I'm not trying to be like the fun police. I'm
Take the
just saying.
swings out,
I'm not taking the swings out, and I'm not taking the monkey bars out. I'm not going to take out anything else that's going to get my tires slashed. I'm just saying, like, there are certain parts of playgrounds that, I don't know. I did recess duty for a year last year, once a week, and there's definitely consistently parts of the playground that are not used.
We get those spinny things?
Right.
Can we put those back in?
You want the spin thing? You want a merry-go-round?
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends on the age. too.
You want one of those hamster wheels we used to have?
Digression.
Changing to bark chips.
I would like to agree with the recommendation.
I would agree with the recommendation. I'd rather keep.
Agree with the recommendation.
Reduce class sinks.
This one I was kind of unsure about.
I would actually rather
Have
find
a
out
sink
from
in
the
every
teachers
classroom.
how often they use those sinks. I don't want to take away from.
I've been in many classrooms where there is stuff being stored in the sinks because the sinks are not being used as a sink. I got to go back to the bark chips for 1 second. So this PIP product, is that rubberized chip,
Poured in place.
right? Or is it the flat rubberized?
It's a solid surface.
It's a solid surface?
It's a,
It's
yeah,
not
it's
the-
Okay,
not
then
like
never mind.
chips
It's
or
not the
rubber,
chips, because I was
yeah.
gonna say, how are you gonna stop those from traveling from, okay, never mind. I got it now. Move along. Yeah, we could ask the teachers about the class sinks. I mean,
I just feel like that with kindergartners, they try to encourage a lot of washing of hands and things of that nature that,
but aren't they in the bathrooms anyway?
so, but there's only like one bathroom, like one
There's
sink,
no
and there's
sinks.
25
no
kids.
sinks in the
Actually, They
bathrooms.
moved them all out.
Oh, well,
They're outside the bathrooms.
Let's have one in
the
every classroom then.
There's,
Like-
Well,
there's
then I'll put
two
'em in the
next to each
classroom.
other.
So
Okay,
instead of 2, you'd have 1.
One.
okay.
I can have one.
And I think that was by design so that the teacher could help the students to make sure that they're doing good hand washing.
I hope that's what it was, because the
I'm on.
germaphobe in me is getting a little, I'm like,
Getting a little creeped out.
yeah, I'm getting a little
and
case of the
that way
heebie-jeebies right
they
now.
can, it's better use of the restroom, so. someone
More
can go-
efficient.
Yes,
Gotcha.
thank you. Efficient.
Okay,
So are we reducing them or not?
I would not reduce them then, in that case, if that's the way the bathrooms are designed.
Julie?
hang on a second.
Wes?
No, I'm not in favor of
Right.
that.
So just to clarify, so this isn't taking sinks out of the bathroom and only having them in the classroom. This is having not sinks in every classroom. Is that what we're saying?
No, there'll be
2 to
sinks in
1.
every classroom. Every classroom has 2 sinks specified outside the bathroom door. This is proposing to remove one of those.
Oh, to remove one.
2 to 1. 2 sinks to 1 sink.
So if it's just moving to one.
And there, but remember, there's not eating in the bathroom, so there's only that one sink.
Right.
For
I
25
gotcha.
kids.
Yeah, but they're not gonna all go to the bathroom at the same time.
But they may be painting.
Yeah, but if everybody's
Right,
hands
so
are
it's-
painted.
And
Yeah, but
someone's going to
I
the
mean,
bathroom.
then we say in an art room, you have 2 sinks. Maybe in the classroom.
Yeah, but they do stuff in the classroom too.
Okay, I give up.
I don't know.
I gave my opinion. I'm out. Move along.
Julie? I'm still
Oh,
waiting.
Jeez,
Leaves
Louise,
the
man.
extra sink.
Okay. Eliminate planting beds.
I'm actually okay with eliminating them. When I looked at the diagram, I just saw people tripping over them anyway.
Jason?
I would go with the recommendation.
Recommendation by Mike and Abe?
Yep, whatever they
Okay.
propose.
Julie, what is yours?
I'm fine with eliminating them.
Eliminating. Robin?
I mean, I would leave them in. It's only gonna save us $3,000 to take them out, but I think the impact of having them aesthetically is probably worth it, and I think it would lend opportunities to the kids to do some kind of gardening opportunity at
Wes?
some point.
I'm gonna go with the recommendation.
To leave them in.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 4.
Just curious, what was the consensus on the sink issue?
To leave them in.
To leave 2
Yeah.
in each room?
Anybody have anything else? Those were the recommendations, those are the things. Anything else that anybody wants to be considered?
You said get back to us on the HVAC stuff?
Yes, that's about the only piece that's left, kind of.
Okay.
Okay, if you have any more questions, send it to Mike and Abe and me so we can reconcile the documents together to see what the dollar amounts would come back to. Thanks. And
Thank you.
as I said,
Thanks.
Thank you.
this is about $500,000. That's about what we can value engineer off, because everything else is, so out of 500, some of them we said we would remove, some of them we won't. Mike and Abe and I'll reconcile some of them because I have the notes. I'll give it to them. Anything else, let us know, and we'll wait to see what funding we can get from the park district as well as the village to bring that number down. Otherwise,
And the access road is still a must from the village? Because that was
we
a
haven't
big,
heard anything from them since the last time. They haven't made anything.
Still,
You want me to ask?
I think so, on the
Public meeting.
19th when we go.
I mean, that was a big piece. That was the biggest chunk of the increase, so.
That's about $1 million, so
Yeah.
we haven't heard anything about that right now.
Are they planning on giving us an answer one way or the other? Or are we just?
I have a phone call with the assistant village manager tomorrow.
Okay.
I did confirm there is $500,000 in the village budget. 200 is a gift, 300 is a loan at this point, so it's not a full 500 to us at this point. So I'm trying to see if we can't get that changed.
Thank you.
The next item is the EFMP plan refinement. We had, the last meeting was on the 30th. At that, we decided that we would go with the kindergarten center and additions on all our buildings as the plan we had. The rough estimate on that was about 52 million, but actually, and on that were some of the items which were grayed out on which the cost was given. DLR is putting together a document which would probably be in a line item, which would show for each school the addition or renovation and the dollar amount associated with it. You should get that document soon, and from that we will go down and see what can be or cannot be done to what the total amount comes down to. Out of that, the kindergarten center would stay separate because that is a fixed amount with the bids right now. So if there is any questions or concerns or any information that you need about that plan, you should get that document soon with the plan as well as the refined line item. We should be prepared to discuss it at the next meeting to see how it goes.
The kindergarten costs, I thought the bids were only good for 60 days?
90.
90 days?
Yes,
So if we exceed that, then we have to go out to rebid?
yes,
So that
Oh, boy.
could change, right?
Yes.
yes. We will have to, if it passes in November, if we put all of it out for referendum in November, we'll go out to bids in January, right? Or December, January.
Yeah, well, as soon as possible, I mean.
So in this, the other thing was the financing piece of it a little bit. We are up on our bids. Our cash reserve is only for 2.5 months of what we can. So we are running in a deficit. One of the things we would want to discuss along with what funding we get from the village and the stuff would be is, do we want to put all of it for the on the referendum? Or do we want to put some from our cash reserves, considering that we only have 2.5 months of working cash at that point, to pull something out of there to put in? That's a question we need to answer because that will determine that final amount or final total that he is going to go for. Anyway, at 14.7, or even when we bring it down, depending on our contributions from the village and the park districts, we won't be able to fund all of it through our cash reserves. We don't have that much. So do we want to put some of it? Do we not want to put any of it? Do we want to save on it? Because once we go out to referendum and if the cost increases or something happens, we wouldn't have any cash left with us to complete a project if we have bonded out everything and we have left with zero cash reserves. As well as going for short-term borrowing, as Abe has mentioned, not the smartest idea to do. We have had, last year itself, the state was $2 million short in paying our bill, and it came in late. So that did not happen. They don't make payments at time. We are already $300,000 up from our transportation costs and everything else. So that is a discussion we need to have. We can start it today, keep it at a time limit, or we can have this discussion in the next couple of meetings after we see the EFMP plan refinement as to when you get the line items as to what you want to go for.
So I'd like to see it refined first, but I also kind of want some input from Abe. Because I know, I'm stretching my memory from last year's meetings too. Like I know Brad had to have his arm kind of twisted for a certain cost to get to that 12. So I'd like to know where you felt comfortable too. I think we have to, from the community input, I think you almost have to at least provide some relief on this from the reserves to make it digestible for them.
So in the tentative budget, when you presented the 52 million where it was flat impact to the taxpayers, that was the entire 52, right?
That was the entire.
So that did not take out anything out of
Right.
cash reserve. So we put any in, that would then even reduce that even more.
Right.
Okay.
It's more of where a comfort level
Yep.
with Abe is at, if it feels it's even feasible.
Well, like, I'm assuming everybody read the Daily Herald, or was it Tribune or Daily Herald? Sorry, the Tribune article that came out. Can we get a little bit more clarification, unless I'm just hoping to get a different answer, but can we get a little bit more clarification from the Park District as to where that needle is on whether this can be part of the EFMP? It cannot. The referendum, it cannot. And if so, and it fails, that consequence. But my real question is it an all or nothing thing? Is it either it all goes into the referendum, and if it passes, they'll support that, and if it doesn't, it doesn't? Or is it there's a certain amount that they'll still work with us on a lease if it, even if it fails? I just think.
But if it fails, how will you build it? You don't have the money.
I have something to say. I started to bring it up at the community engagement and was kind of told that it wasn't really the right time. I definitely think that the consideration has to be taken after we get some of the numbers in, but I think we should consider only putting some of the kindergarten center up for referendum and doing nothing else. I mentioned it the other night. I know that it doesn't help the middle schools right now, but it'll help the elementaries. And if we have a failed referendum, nobody gets helped. And I was also concerned reading the same article Robin was referring to that if the referendum fails, the Park District will no longer offer us the lease of the land, is what David said, was quoted on in the article. So that was very concerning to me, that if we put this up and it fails, we really have nothing to go back on and we have to go start all over again. If we use some of our reserves, whatever Abe says that number would be, whether it be 6, whether it be 8, whether it be 10, whatever he recommends, I think we'll be looking for a small enough number from the community that it will pass, and again, won't stop us from asking again in the near future. And since the kindergarten is the first part of the plan anyway, just to keep working on community engagement and just being sure that it will for sure pass. Another concern, if we put out a large referendum and it fails, just from the meeting with the village the other night, we could become so crowded that we need more trailers. We might need them anyway, and I don't see them jumping up and down to approve those trailers. So we could really be in a tight bind. I appreciate that the support we've seen from a lot of the community that have come out and been supportive, but I myself haven't noticed a big portion of the naysayers. There's been a few, but I'm having trouble gauging how close and far we are. If I was for sure saying, I think we're going to pass this thing at 75%, I wouldn't even be bringing this up for consideration, but I'm unsure of where we stand. I just think that we can't afford another failed referendum for a lot of reasons, even just the cost that a referendum, the cost attributed with it. And so I just would like the board to consider that as an option, because I think it's always been like an all or nothing kind of scenario. And that's scary to me to gamble. I think that if we fail, there's undoubtedly going to be an impact on our students. and anything we can do to try to mitigate that. That's just where I stand.
So what's your proposal, that we take the Sullivan Center completely?
That we only do the Sullivan
only
Center
do
at
the
this
Sullivan-
one.
Big change from you, Julie.
Well, I mean, something has to be done. I mean,
No, it's fine.
I'm still not the biggest fan of it, but I see it as the best, easiest, quickest solution.
And what I can do is reach out to the Park District and see if I can get confirmation on that statement of where their hard line is. That was, I think, was your question.
Well, right, like if we put up 5 million of that on the referendum, is it the same consequences if we were to put all 14 on and it failed, you know?
I will check with them and get you
I
that
think-
answer. And that might help you make a decision then on what you would put in.
Right.
The other thing that would help us make that decision is to know if it's only, if it's 14 for the kindergarten, what's the impact to the taxpayers? If it's 52, we know what the impact is.
Well, but I
And
mean,
then
But
get-
also 52 is not all of it at some
I
time.
understand.
We are doing it, we've broken
Yeah,
it
but-
down in 5
But
years
what I'm
anyway.
saying is, once we understand what are we getting for the amount that we're asking for, what's the impact to the taxpayer, then we can make that decision. Just to say it's less, therefore it's got a better chance of passing,
yeah, but I mean,
it's
I
not
would hope that it wouldn't
necessarily-
be 14. I would
it's
hope
not
that we'd be
necessarily
putting
the
in
case.
something.
to me, it's more, here's amount, if, just because it's less, but you're only solving one piece of the problem, is the community going to even go for that? If they know, yes, you asked for it, it's much less, but my middle schoolers are going to be in classes of 35, maybe I don't want that, maybe I want more. So I guess what we need to do as a board is to understand, once we have these numbers, what's the impact, and then try to get a gauge from the community. What are they going to support? Is it just an absolute dollar amount that they're willing to support? And then if that's the case, then we have to prioritize it. Or is it, what problems are we trying to solve, and what are they willing to spend on? We don't know that yet. So
Right.
I can't say less just for the kindergarten is a sure thing. Nothing's a sure thing, but is it more of a sure thing than asking for more? Because it solves different problems and it impacts people differently.
Well, and just to reiterate what I said is I think that, I mean, if we use some of our reserves, like I said, whether it be 6, 8, or 10, I don't think that prohibits us from going out again a short time later. Where, we've talked about in the past with a big fail that, I mean, we could be 2 years out then. I think that a small amount, the community would realize that it's a short-term solution and that there will likely be something else coming in the future.
What is the timing for the board making this decision? Because we really don't have that many more meetings before a question has to be submitted for the ballot.
August 28th is the deadline for submission on the ballot. We need at least 2 weeks before that from our past experience to actually run the whole resolution on it.
So by
It
July,
takes-
we should probably,
Yes, you need that answer by, at least by the
the
end
last
of
meeting in July.
Because we need some time to run those resolutions and run those legal paperwork on that.
So let me say a couple things because I won't be here at the next meeting. It's the first time I've heard that idea. I mean, I'm willing to consider it because I'll
I said
consider.
it the other night.
Okay, sorry, I didn't understand that was exactly
No,
what
it's
you were
okay.
boiling it down to. My apologies. Holy moly. Did I do something wrong when I came in here tonight? Like, can everybody just chill? We're all on the same side.
I'm sure.
Okay, cool. So, okay. I'm concerned from either angle we take on this Sullivan Center thing, because if it's the only thing we put on the referendum and it fails, we have zero relief for anybody. And there's already been some community feedback that they do not like the Sullivan Center idea. So to have us have spent all of this time and energy and staff, overtime and our resources to only go put a question on that's going to get 6 or 8 million from the community, knowing we'll have to go back at it very shortly and do this entire spend of time, energy, and money again in a couple years. I mean, I think that's dangerously short-sighted. On the other hand, if we do this big, I guess I'm just concerned about putting the Sullivan Center in the referendum, period. I mean, I hear what you're saying by us not having the 14 million. I'm just really concerned that if it's part of a referendum and people don't support the Sullivan Center, will the whole referendum fail because the Sullivan Center was a piece of it? Will people not be able to say, I liked 90% of it, so I'm going to vote yes, even though I didn't like 10% of it? It's
The messaging you have to get out.
Well, I was just about to say, like, the education and
it's the education, but at some point, there's people that are fairly well educated on it at this point that still just don't agree with the design. They don't agree with the plan. They don't agree with it being on Aspen Drive. There's various things that we've heard from people that are staying fairly well aware of the issue. That, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like, of course, there's a certain amount of education that has to go into it. Of course, there may be some people that'll support it because it's part of a referendum that has other things they do support. So they'll go, okay, that's not my favorite part, but I'll support it anyway. I just really would hate, I don't think we're going to get another bite at the apple anytime soon. So I don't think this is a thing where if it fails in November, we go back out in April. I cannot envision the community being able to deal with that right now. So I'm just really nervous to put it in the referendum at all. But if we're going to do it, I would certainly, I don't know. I mean, I really think the Park District is kind of throwing a monkey wrench in it for me because I'm sitting here going like, okay, but then it's really the voters who get to decide whether that land is leased to us, and that's a scary proposition. I would still like that to be an option to us if the referendum fails, but of course, our hands are kind of tied. So I think there's a lot of moving parts here that I need more time to think about, but I'm definitely concerned with it being part of the referendum. And I just don't know what the other option is necessarily, but I definitely would like to hear what you think we can put in, see if that at all changes the Park District's opinion as to whether it's the full 14 million or not, and go from there.
And I'll check with them immediately
Thanks.
tomorrow and try to get some answers.
Okay.
Matt, you want to say something?
No, I think I've said my.
Wes?
I see what, Julie's saying, and I also see what Robin's saying, because I've heard some of the same sentiment about the Sullivan Center on the referendum, and that worries me. But I do think that we need to try to get the biggest bang for our buck with this referendum moving forward, because, you have serious issues at Middle North as well as Elementary South that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. After what Sonali, Matt, Abe, and Nick went through with the village, we don't know how many more extensions we'll get for portables, and we don't know if we'll even be allowed to add any more portables because it's not like we have a lot of space, land to put them on.
And portables cost, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. They're expensive.
We're not part of the free portable program.
Free and
We should be.
portable.
So I am anxiously awaiting the document from DLR with the line items so that we can get to work and be able to discuss this at the next meeting and move it forward.
Okay. You should get that document sometime this week from DLR. And if you have any questions, I know the next meeting, quite a few of you are not there. So we are going to make quorum, but if you have any questions regarding that document and stuff, please send them in so that they can be included in the topic of discussion. Because we have to, like I said, we have to move fast, and we have the next meeting and 2 more meetings before we make that decision. We can put a special meeting in there, but given everybody's holiday schedule and stuff, it might be hard to make quorum, even if we put in meetings in the middle of July at some point. So I just want to make sure that when you get documents, read them. If you have questions, send them so that they can be part of discussion, especially for the next meeting because we won't be meeting. We barely make quorum for that meeting.
Okay.
Business meeting, nothing else? Okay. Call to public comment. Anybody wishes to comment? Going once, twice, gone.
Wait, somebody's. Is your hand up or no?
No.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Sorry. Sorry.
Sandra? No.
Come on, Sandra.
Sandra? No. Stacy, take her down. Consent agenda. I want to pull out the closed session minutes for May 18th, right, Wes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to pull them out. We have one more personnel which was walked in, and it is in your packet. So we have closed session minutes from May 12th, board meeting minutes from May 14th, closed session minutes from May 14th, special board meeting minutes from May 21st, special board meeting minutes from May 30th. We have the expenditure report, personnel, which is new hires, leave of absence, and resignations. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as amended.
It's presented.
Presented, because I didn't mention the closed session minutes. I pulled them out.
Oh, okay. I just meant as it was presented on the sheet of paper. Okay, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Wes. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Jason Schron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
West Point, aye. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next item would be the closed session minutes for May 18th. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the closed session minutes of May 18th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Jason, seconded by Matt. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Schron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Abstain.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
West Point, abstain. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 5 ayes, 2 abstentions. The next action item is the intergovernmental agreement extension for the Lincoln Early Childhood Center. Any discussions?
No.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the 3-year intergovernmental agreement extension for preschool services at Lincoln Early Childhood Center between the Board of Education of Hawthorne School District 73, Mundelein School District 75, and Fremont School District 79, beginning July 1st, 2018, and expiring on June 30th, 2021, as presented.
I second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Robin. Could I have a roll call, please?
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
West Point, aye. Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jason Schron.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. Superintendent's report. It's his last report, by the way.
It's really short. We're on summer break. There are no activities. Teachers are at home reading and preparing for next year. And personally, I would just like to thank all the board members and all the board members I worked with in the past for your support in the community and the great teachers and the admin and everybody's understanding that family comes first. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
I saw you, Sandra. One time I waved to Sandra at a store and she didn't see me. She's about 5 feet away. So we always do this.
So today is Nick's last board meeting. So on behalf of the board and the community, I'd like to thank him for 6 years of service. When you think about it, he has achieved a lot during this time. He started with the strategic plan, which we, the community, drafted after input from all stakeholders. It has served in moving our district forward with focus on the mission and vision. We reorganized our schools so there is equity in all our schools. We offered free full-day kindergarten to close achievement gap and to get all students started equitably. The one-to-one technology rollout after the upgrade of our infrastructure, expansion of dual language to middle schools, There were a lot of initiatives that were started behind the scenes too, such as PLC, the half-day release for professional development, inclusion practice, and co-teaching of special ed students, just some that I can think of. We started the Nest and Faces program and the Hawthorne Foundation. We created the facilities master plan, and hopefully we can get the referendum passed that will serve our community and students for years to come. All these and many more things were done under his leadership and guidance, and I'd like to sincerely thank Nick for all he has done for our students in the community and wish him all the best at Maryville. There's something I want to say which is more personal. I was elected as a president or voted in as a president in April, and since that time I've worked closely with Nick. And there have been lots of times when I've huffed and puffed into his office because someone bothered me or something bothered me. And he's always heard me out. And one of the things, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he always said was, it's about the kids. The rest of it is noise, and it'll sort itself out. And I want to thank him personally for making me a better board member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Do we need to?
Yes. It is Nick's last meeting. I told him we're going to keep him here forever.
All right.
Closed session, do I?
I move that we go into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. 5 ILCS 120/2C1 is amended by PA 93-0057, and to discuss collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes or employees. 5 ILCS 120/2C2.
Do I have a second? Motion by Robin, seconded by Julie. We will now be in closed session.
Yeah, roll
You have
call
to take a
vote.
vote.
Yeah, could I have a vote?
Jason Tron?
Aye.
Julie Simpson?
Aye.
Jeff Bard?
Huh?
I said aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Robin Cleek?
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Brad Jacobs?
Aye.
Sonali Patel?
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. We'll give them a couple of minutes to leave. So